Isn't this a sports show?
So I got a haircut yesterday, 2 days ago. I also brought the beard in a little bit today.
Ooh.
And so this is basically, I'm just waiting for the guy that said I looked fatter on Facebook than I sound on the radio.
Almost entirely.
Just come back now. It was mostly fluff. Facebook commenter.
This is Almost Entirely Sports with Joshua Briscoe.
He also called into the postgame show at one point, and he's cool. Mom, please stop bullying that guy. It's fine.
Not a joke.
Not a joke. Not a joke. None of what I just said was a joke. Every single syllable was a real thing.
Take the show with you by listening on the Sports Radio 810 mobile app at 810WHB.com or by searching for Almost Entirely Sports wherever you get your podcasts.
That was bad. I'm sorry. I'm not sorry, but it was bad. There it is. Hold on. Let me change that. That was bad. I admit it. I'm not sorry.
This is Almost Entirely Sports on Sports Radio 810 WHB.
Man, if you can be not driving today, even to this point, stay home. Every single person currently driving through Kansas City or that has driven around the greater Kansas City area in the last 12 hours, morons, all of you. Just a stupid thing to do voluntarily. Anyway, I'm in studio. Joshua Briscoe here. Rudy Salazar on the other side of the glass here at Sports Radio 810 WHB. That was a sneaker.
I'm not in studio.
Nah, Rudy's actually, he's astrally projecting from home.
Yeah. I had to use a literal shovel to get the snow off my car.
Correct.
I don't mean like dig around the car.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, no joke. I know we didn't get 18 inches of snow, but like 18 inches of snow had piled up on top of said vehicle. And I had, obviously like a windshield wiper thing. I was like, this
Not
is
gonna
too
cut it.
small.
Nope.
So I grabbed a shovel, and a person laughed at me as I walked by as I'm using a shovel to get the snow off the top of my car.
Every single person who voluntarily took the road for non-emergency purposes today, just because maybe it would make their job a little bit easier, absolute moron. You can watch the show live on the Sports Radio 810 Facebook page, Twitch, YouTube. However you want to get in touch, you can get all the links and stuff on the Twitter, though, at Sports Radio 810 WHB, because you can see me and Rudy here in studio. The rest of you are morons.
I couldn't find my gloves today. I don't know what happened to them.
Wow. I just double-checked to make sure that mine are mine, because we have very similar
I always
gloves.
put mine in the same spot when I get home, and they weren't there. And so I was like, oh, boy, I have to go out with no gloves, I guess, now.
Do you
My
know
hands are cold.
You know how bad today got?
My hair at one point
Oh, no.
was basically just the color white, because I had so much, like, it honestly looked like, like I was in a movie and they, did a little bit of work to make myself look a little older. I so put some gray, some gray highlights.
You were
in
salt
the hair.
and pepper today.
Yeah, like I literally, once I got in the car, I looked in the mirror and noticed that, and the first thing I did was just shake my head, and all this snow went falling out of my hair, and I was like, oh my goodness.
I would say it was probably 15% dandruff, 85% snow.
I would say, because I don't really have dandruff, I would say it was probably 80% dandruff or snow.
Whoa.
That'd be bad.
That's bad.
15% old hair product, 5% dandruff.
That seems fair. I went beanie today. It's a blustery one out there. Also, it's a new one.
Blustery.
If you are ever wondering, if you ever look at Super Bowl merchandise and you're at or around the Super Bowl and you think, who the bleep is buying generic Super Bowl LVI merchandise? This guy. Media. Because I have no real rooting interest in the Rams or the Bengals, but remind me, put a pin in this. I said this phrase to Jordan also whenever we were actually in LA right after we had bought these things. At some point, remind me to have a somewhat serious AES After Dark conversation about what I believe to be the importance of trinkets. There's my TED Talk that I'll do someday. It's like the evolutionary justification for trinkets. I've got a case to make on that. But I like getting, little souvenirs from places, little things for a number of factors that I'll eventually get into in my extensive TED Talk. But I did grab an overpriced Super Bowl hoodie or a beanie because I wasn't going to buy Rams or Bengals stuff.
Of course not.
But I was out there in sunny Los Angeles, but I knew I was going to be needing to keep this dome warm.
It's also a
back
reminder,
here.
right? It's like, hey, I was at this Radio Row, not at the game itself, but I was at this. This week.
If they would have sold Super Bowl LVI Radio Row merch, I probably would have bought that.
And then that would have been perfect.
Yeah.
You know what? They're really missing out on a great opportunity to target like 50 people.
If I could have put on a T-shirt that said like,
I went to the Super Bowl, but I was stuck on Radio Row the whole week, and all I got was a stupid T-shirt.
I talked to Taylor Heineke. It's just what it says on the
that's
front.
Good.
You know, that I would have probably bought that.
ITTT
H. It sounds like a sneeze when you say it all together. Those are my two dumb. I had two different dumb quick intros for today's show. One was about me being a hypocrite about other people driving, and the other was me talking about my new hat. It's a very comfortable, well-made hat, though. I feel good wearing it.
My
happy to have
intro
it.
idea, and yours were better, which is why I didn't even bring it up. Was
No, it's fine. Let's take a third shot at it.
to
'Cause at this
essentially
point,
start the show off as the music's playing. You don't actually talk first. It's just me going, do we have to do this? And you just being like, yeah, we have to. But are you sure? Basically what I did in the talk back, but like on the radio, because I've only seen one good thing on Twitter today.
oh, what is that?
Oh,
What's the
just
one good thing on Twitter
Just
today?
like the wish list of, I wonder if Josh Allen was a Chief. Not quarterback Josh Allen, but Kentucky's finest Josh Allen.
Here's the best thing I've seen on the internet today.
I don't think it's possible. Well, anything's possible with Brett Veach with trading draft picks for players. But I don't think it's likely. But you know what? A man can dream.
The best thing I've seen on the internet today is from the rapidly rocketing up the listener commenter power rankings chart, because the judge on YouTube says, "Hey there, handsome mans." Hello to you, presumably handsome
What's
man.
YouTube?
It's a video platform where you can put your radio and stuff. The bit that we've both sort of now taken one step into, by the way, is one that we did in a not yet released but recently recorded edition of Times Ours, and we ended up doing like 15 minutes of halftime show talk. Which, by the way, kind of annoyed that you and I have not had our halftime show discussion, Rudy. Just have had stuff hopping our way.
We had a whole hour for nonsense planned.
Yeah.
And then
Everything.
Twitter happened.
So here's how bad it's gotten, and then I'll finally stop hitting snooze on this one particular topic, and I'm going to explain my whole headspace.
I just want to jump in, but apparently yours on Twitch says that Jason gave his account today of your airport experience on The Zone. So
Ooh, excellent.
I'm now interested of going back and listening to The Zone for the first time ever and checking that out. Bazink.
Here's how dark it got today, okay? Tonight on the show, we're going to have two guests. One is our friend Daniel Lust. He is a continually rising sports law expert. He has outpaced me in Twitter followers in a quick couple of steps.
We've got maybe one more appearance from him on
Yes.
this show before he absolutely is like, hey guys, sorry, but
I'm
I've
writing this down.
I've outgrown you.
We have to confront him with the
Or I'm
idea
just
that we
now-
got him early, and
Yeah.
he is going to be sidestepping my texts very soon.
Or at the very least, it's not even so much that he actually says I've outgrown you. It's just, hey, I'm just too busy. Like I genuinely would like to come on.
That's right.
But I have a radio hit scheduled for every hour through 2033.
Right. And he should, because
Yeah.
he's doing something that is very unique in this space.
And be very good at it, right? Like,
yeah.
Because like that's part of the thing, right? There are a lot of niches out there, right? And plenty of people like right. There are other sports law podcasts. There are other sports law,
Not in my world. There's
people.
not.
but they're not. They didn't do it well, right?
Yeah.
Like it's not that Dan was the first.
The two Dans,
The two
Dan
Dans,
Lust and Dan
yes.
Wallach, do a fabulous job
It's not
covering
that
all
they
of this.
were the first at this, right? There have been people before them, but you know what?
They're the best.
They were
at
the
it.
best.
Yeah.
And that's why they are big and other people aren't, right? Like sports, whatever, little niche, they're podcasts for everything. But you don't hear about most of them because people aren't good. And you hear about one of them because they are good. And we got the good one.
We got one of the two good Dans. We should probably talk to Wallach again soon too. I miss talking to him as well. But they do a
Was it
great
the
job.
Super Bowl?
Radio Row in
Yeah.
Atlanta. Yep, that's where
I
that's
was
where
thinking
this
that was the last
relationship
maybe the
began.
last time we talked to him. I can't remember if we've had him on since
Oh, I think
then.
we have, but
Okay, yeah,
but
yeah, okay.
that's
But
where that's where he and I
this
first
all,
met.
That's where this
Yeah.
all started.
So again, the power of Radio Row, the Dans and Taylor Heineke.
Contract Dan to Mendel.
You can keep workshopping it.
It's pretty good.
So
Con Dan Tremendal. Con Dant Detrimental. We're getting there.
conduct detrimental is what I would go with.
It's better.
Speaking of conduct detrimental to the greater good, Rudy's out here. Rudy's Russell Westbrook of this segment. It's just shot. Doesn't matter. Get your own board back up again.
It's the nicest thing you've ever said about me.
That's your Russell Westbrook.
I'll take that, man.
It's less impressive because the only person you're blocking out for the rebound is me. Theoretically on the same team.
Are you Austin Reeves?
I'd love to be Austin Reeves. So we'll talk to Dan at 8. Obviously, there's a lot going on in the NFL world with a various number of legal cases, from the Brian Flores stuff to Washington to Dallas. And then also today, we got a verdict passed down in the Tyler Skaggs case that has obviously been a tremendous sort of rocking of Major League Baseball. And we haven't talked about it on this show, and I don't know that a lot of shows have talked about it, in part because I don't know if we are all equipped to talk about it. Dan is. We'll talk to him about that and all those other things at 8.
So I recommend anybody, like if you just want to know more about it and you just want to get quick, Pablo Torre obviously talked about it. I forget who he had on, who works for ESPN, who has been covering it for him. Came on with him on ESPN Daily, and they essentially broke down the whole thing. The first thing popped in my mind was, I can't believe it's been 2 years since this happened.
Yeah.
Like it feels like it was. It just feels like it wasn't that long ago that the first that Tyler Skaggs passed away. It's incredibly sad from just every point of view, right? Like there's not like you hear the story and there's not really this is clearly the bad person and he should suffer, right? It is just sad from however angle you look at it. You're just like, man, this is incredibly sad.
Yeah.
So if you don't want to be sad, don't listen to the podcast. But if you want to know more about it, it was incredibly well done, and you learn a lot about the whole situation and the whole case and all that stuff.
So we'll talk to Dan about that and all of the NFL things at 8, and then at 9, here's how you can tell where we're really at right now emotionally. You know what we're doing at 9 o'clock?
Pokemon.
Put me in, coach. I'm ready to play
Pokemon Legends.
today.
Well, tonight.
Put me in, coach. I'm
Trainer.
ready to play
Pokemon Legends.
today.
Tonight.
Look at me. I could be
Pokemon Master.
center field. Baseball's back! And not in the way that baseball's back for us.
They had a 15-minute conversation today.
You know how many things you
I
can't
also-
accomplish in 15 minutes?
I also
We've been doing this segment right now longer than the MLB and MLBPA talk today.
actually we started at like 7:03, so we're about a minute short.
It's felt longer.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I had a 15-minute conversation meeting today that I think possibly was more productive than MLB's.
If anything happened, it was.
productive.
Who you throwing under the bus there?
You.
Okay. I would say these 15 minutes have been barely more productive than the
Yes.
MLB meetings.
Yeah.
Excuse me, 14 minutes. Let me get
I mean,
my
it's like 14 and a half. at
14
this point.
minutes and 38 seconds.
I mean, 24, 25, 26.
Let me know when we can stop being productive, because I feel like we've almost been too good for this segment so far.
Yeah.
So at 9, it's 7:17, and I still haven't said the name of the person joining us at 9 o'clock tonight.
Oh, they know.
Well, he knows.
No, I mean, the people, you say baseball, the people know it's coming.
Lesky's back, even though baseball isn't. David Lesky of Inside the Crown. He will join us at 9 tonight. We will talk about... I wrote down some things. I'm getting back to writing some things down on my legal pad. It's nice to doodle over the course of a show and whatnot. The first thing on my list for Lesky is baseball, ?
Will we get baseball?
I just wrote down baseball ?
Because I believe, if I remember what I saw from Jeff Passan, I think for the regular season to start on time, spring training has to start in, I believe, 11 days.
Mm-hmm. I think their self-imposed deadline was Saturday.
Yeah, it seems unlikely.
Yeah. So we'll talk to Lesky about baseball
maybe
stuff.
It was less than 11 days. Maybe it was 4 days. I don't. Here's the thing. I don't remember a lot of things. Twitter's been bad today.
It's been bad.
Try to erase most of what I saw on Twitter. Point being, the deadline to start on time is coming. And I don't know if they're gonna.
So we'll talk to Lesky about that at 9. Legal side of things with Daniel Lust at 8. And we'll have some other time to spread our wings and fly over the course of the rest of the show.
Can we please crash?
Yeah, I mean, I would argue we already have. So what we're going to do, we're going to take an early timeout. We're going to say, there's your setup, there's your dumb bits. I've now gotten at least through one first segment where we didn't have to talk about the thing today. And whenever we come back, we will talk about the thing significantly more. We'll talk about Eric Bieniemy, what is and isn't happening, and what you should actually spend your time caring about whenever we come back.
Want more Almost Entirely Sports? Watch the show live on the Sports Radio 810 Facebook page.
Kansas City, we are proud of you for 4 straight years in the AFC Championship. We went 14-6 overall this season.
This is Almost Entirely Sports with Joshua Briscoe
What else do you listen to while on a police chase, if not Almost Entirely Sports?
on Sports Radio 810 WHB.
Okay. So, few things. Part of me would like to skip this segment entirely, but maybe we'll do it almost entirely, I suppose. We have several steps in this conversation, and as has been put into quotation marks as the thing by Dinglenator on Twitch, which does make Rudy and I both very happy.
It's a good Twitch name.
Just a good username, man. Twitch has really brought back some of those AOL, AIM sort of usernames back into the forefront. I feel like most people on Twitter now, their name is, name _, last name.
Unless they're creative like me.
Exactly. But I could just use a few more, dinglenators in my life.
I mean, yeah.
I got up in the air, I realized that was the end of that sentence, and I had no other way to put it.
I was never super creative with those names back in the day. It was just always simply AC Bulldog and whatever number I wore.
You're not going to get me to talk about screen names.
No, that was all I had to say.
No, I'm
That
just.
was the end of it.
It was because I didn't follow you. That rabbit took off that direction. I watched that rabbit walk away.
I was just saying I wasn't creative.
That's fine. I understand that, and I believe you. I zip my lips. So I'm going to power through this in this segment. We talked about Eric Bieniemy quite a bit last night. That conversation was off of sort of two things. One was the larger idea of there being some sort of like rumors of a halftime issue. And the other thing was that video that I referenced seeing of somebody talking on Radio Row about how they had heard that someone had heard that there was a thing. So that whole conversation last night ended up not including the thing that started making the rounds. At least I saw it minutes after the show ended. I ended up here reading that story and stories right now, actually. Reading the thing. I was here for an hour and a half after the show trying to figure out what the bleep was going on.
For people to know, Josh even said, hey, I'm going to be here for a bit. You don't have to wait for me.
I was here. Right, Rudy was gone. There was a Rudy-shaped cloud that was in the hallway as Rudy was on his way out of here.
I didn't realize you were here, though, for that long.
I think I left here at about 11:30. Just trying to figure out what was going on there. That's
understandable.
I've spent a decent amount of my day today trying to figure out if I'm the idiot missing something.
I mean, yeah, but
in this instance.
Not on this, though.
So I say that to say our conversation on Eric Bieniemy last night was based off of just sort of the general weirdness of the situation and the idea that there was some rumor bubbling. So then after the show, I don't know when they hit publish. I know when they hit delete. But sometime after the show, I saw for the first time this blog post that goes up that details some sort of explicit tension between Eric Bieniemy and Patrick Mahomes that directly blames Eric Bieniemy for derailing the Chiefs' season really altogether. And frankly, they've pulled the post down now, and that is a sort of standard that you get whenever you say that you don't care about the standards behind things that pose as journalism. When they disappear, you can't say, "Well, actually, it's no." That's not how putting news into the world works. We were so ready to ruin Adam Schefter whenever Tom Brady might have not been retiring. You don't get to say the whole Chiefs ship got sunk by Eric Bieniemy and then 10 hours later go, "Oopsie daisy, this got a lot of attention. Yikes! Maybe we should have vetted some of this first."
Well, they talked to a close friend.
You let that shot out of your hand. Ball's going to land somewhere. So, and to just be real open out front here, I had the thought of, should I just go through? Should we go through and do an annotated version of this story and just let me go through with a red pen and just say, here, this is nonsense. This might be something. This is nonsense. And I don't want to do that. I don't think that the specifics of the story that has been unpublished, I don't think it's worth your time. If it was just a tweet thread from somebody with 12 followers, none of us would have seen it, and that probably would have been for the best. But we're here now. And so there are a couple elements of it that I want to lay out there. One, you heard Matt Derrick, our friend, speak to this earlier on Crunch Time tonight. And this is something that I got to just give credit to the people here. I don't know how much we're Voldemorting, but in the episode of Times Ours that me and Seth Kaiser and Nate Taylor just recorded, Nate said verbatim, if Eric Bieniemy wants to be the Chiefs' offensive coordinator for the Chiefs next season, he will be. Nate knows stuff, man. He knows stuff I don't. Matt Derrick knows stuff that I don't. We're talking about journalism there. I told you last night, I don't want you to call me a journalist. I do not consider myself one. Analyst, sure. Sports entertainer of some sort, sure. General
Pundit.
buffoon, pundit, sure. What you can ascribe that to me. And God knows if I ever get a scoop, I'll tell you it's a scoop, and you can take it with a grain of salt if you want, right? If I was going to travel back in time 12 hours and tell myself something, first of all, I'd say just do the show from home tonight. It's not worth driving in. But
That's what I told you.
The second thing, you tried. I'm stubborn. The second thing would probably be like, hey, this isn't even probably worth your breath to shout out at. But now we're at a point where I feel like the snowball is at a size that someone, if you don't speak out on what you know to be some foolishness, you leave people to make those judgments for themselves, and that can get dangerous. This, for me, is my maybe biggest underlying issue with this post that went up altogether. And this is a little bit of sort of journalism sidetracking. I am not a journalist in any sort of traditional sense. But I care about journalism. I learned how to do journalism and I said, oh, that looks hard. Can I talk instead? Can I just talk about my opinions instead?
And to give yourself some credit, like there are occasions when you put the journalist hat on, right? Like it's not a full-time thing.
But I'll tell you when I do.
Yes, but you have obviously put that hat on at times.
I'll tell you when I do, and even if it costs me $40 at the NFL pop-up shop outside of our hotel, which this beanie did. Not to brag, but this beanie was $40.
That's the new hat. Anytime you're like, hey, I'm putting on my journalist hat, you have to put that hat on.
Oh, this might be the journalist hat.
It just has to stay in your bag.
Wow.
That's the journalist hat.
Okay, I got to think about that. That's pretty good, though, Rudy. This might be, I got it on Radio Row asking journalistic questions.
Yeah, because I've heard people use the phrase, some used to do radio in this city. I remember would frequently say, hey, I'm not a journalist. Occasionally I put the journalist hat on. And usually that's usually involving interviews, right? In that moment you are being a journalist. When you go to a Chiefs press conference, in that moment you are acting more as a journalist.
Yeah.
You don't have to wear that beanie at Chiefs press conferences, but in this room, from now on, we have an actual journalist hat.
I love that.
We're taking a phrase and we're turning it into a real thing. That's
perfect. And also, again, even reporter, I don't mind because sometimes I'm reporting the things that I'm seeing, but I'm not out here chasing scoops. It's not my job. Would I do that someday? I don't know, maybe. But as I sit here right now, I'm not here to preach to you as I drop some names of right. I'm not here to drop the names of your Kansas City Star crew, your Nates, your Matt Derricks. I don't want to leave anybody out, so I'm probably going to stop listing just in case I'm all of a sudden leaving out like a good credentialed real journalist, right? But whenever I am asking a question in a press conference, or if I'm here pontificating to you, the one thing I'm not going to ever do, and if I do this, I swear, I hope someone clips me back to this and said, "Did you do this thing?" And if I ever do, I'll tell you it was an honest mistake, or I should probably quit. I'm never going to mislead you on purpose. If we're just having fun, I'm going to try to make it clear that we're having fun. If I'm giving you my honest analysis that maybe requires some more background information that I have, I'll use that to try to give you the best analysis that I can. If I tell you that I know something and I make it public because I get to break the story, or I know something and I put it out there and say, you got to trust me that I know more going on, or whatever, I'm not going to mislead you on purpose. The other thing that I really don't like it when all of those lines get as blurred as they have become, and this is also not an indictment on internet journalism or anything. I like to think that Arrowhead Report on the SI Fan Nation Network, I like to think that we hold ourselves to a good standard there. The Athletic didn't exist very long ago. They do some great journalism. The Star is able to continue in the life that it has now, in part because it's able to do it on the internet as well. This is not a digital or terrestrial thing.
Matt Verderame is one of our best guests, right?
Right.
And he helped start he was part of a site that literally started just by becoming on the internet.
You can find good work of all sorts in all places. Seth Kaiser exists because of the internet, right?
We would not have Seth if there was not internet sites, right?
That's right.
Because that's how Seth got started.
I probably wouldn't be here.
Yeah, doing it as amateur work and then to professional, right? That's
so.
A lot of good things come from it.
That's not where I'm coming from. I don't want to come off as some like crotchety old snob that, can't see where the space is going. But I am telling you that I really think I'm pretty okay at discerning good information. And in this story that ended up sparking a news cycle, you end up at a point where you could say, hey, you know what? Some of that stuff in there might be based in some truth. Some of it might be true verbatim. But if you have to use the word some, you have confused things either out of purposeful action or out of negligence. And I don't like to leave that judgment to a reader or to a listener. If I'm telling you, hey, here are the facts, you make up your own mind, your own opinion, I think that's a great way to do things. Hey, here's what I know, or here's the analysis that I've seen, here's what I believe. What do you think? That's one thing. Or I can say, as I'm even more inclined to do, here's what I think and why I think you should believe this thing. Here's why you should have this opinion. That's also fine. You're either, you're doing some journalism and leaving up the conclusion to the reader, or you're doing some commentating and trying to bring the reader or listener along with you on sort of that commentator punditry side of things. But whenever you mix those without any sort of insinuation that you are in fact doing that, you are putting readers in a bad spot. And for me, that's why I was pretty comfortable making some value judgments on this post pretty quickly, is because I could go through that story and see some claims like the idea that Eric Bieniemy, in his contract, it says that he has play calling privileges like after the first 15 or something like that. Stuff like the idea that maybe Patrick Mahomes was mic'd up in his helmet, which they have speakers, not microphones, right? Like these little things, and some of them are much bigger things than that. Those are off the top of my head. I don't have the story up anymore because it got deleted.
No, not deleted. Move to drafts.
If you can pull through in a story and say, this is something that is trying to sell me on this objective journalistic bombshell, and there are some things that are objectively untrue, and then some things that step into that space of like, clearly this is now your opinion, but you haven't made that clear. You've pasted this whole thing in here as factual. You've not only undercut your own credibility, but you've also, again, put on the reader not the ability to make their own conclusions about things. That's a different muscle. But you've put on the reader to guess and assume what you have factually and what you have through conjecture, through your opinions, through what you want to have happened. And that part of that conversation is exhausting to me. We're going to get a solution on Eric Bieniemy soon, I believe. Either he's going to come back, or he's going to decide that going somewhere else is the best thing for his career. If what he wants is to go be a head coach somewhere in the NFL, he doesn't think that he can do that from Kansas City. Whatever the logic may be, I told you last night, there are plenty of ways for this story to ultimately unfold. There's plenty of logic for Eric Bieniemy to go somewhere, and if you're the Chiefs, maybe there is something to having a different offensive coordinator in there. But the idea that it all boils down to some rift between Patrick Mahomes and Eric Bieniemy is something that I have not had anyone who would put their name on a byline say to me, or publicly for that matter. And so I already told you that if I was going to do all of this different from 10 o'clock last night to now, maybe I wouldn't have given it a breath of oxygen. Maybe that would have been for the greater good. But sitting here now in an attempt to be responsible about all of this, when I don't believe that everyone involved has been responsible with their information or their conjecture, in an attempt to be responsible, it is harder and harder to be a discerning media consumer throughout the world right now. We are in an evolving media space. Check your sources, not in who you are reporting from, but on who the source of your information is. I know Sam McDowell has just moved from one Sam chair to the other Sam chair, as he's going to do. He's the Star's new columnist, as Mellinger went over to work for the Royals. I'm going to use Sam on this one, though. Again, I could use Herbie Teope, I could use Matt Derrick, I could use Nate, whatever.
Fun fact, that position does, like, the first requirement, it's 5 years of experience in journalism. First name is Sam.
It's really strange that they've done it, but it's worked out great for them so far.
It's if it's not broken, why fix it?
I'm
right?
thinking about legally changing my name. So, if those guys, or if Terez Paylor, when Terez tweeted something about the Kansas City Chiefs, and he wrote something about football, I do not imagine there would be one person in the city who went, I don't know about that one. Because you knew. I couldn't tell you a time where Herbie has ever tweeted anything out and then had to put up a retraction because his info was bad. We haven't heard anything from any of the national guys who are... No one is perfect, and I don't even want to hold people to that standard because God knows I'm not going to hit it. Some would argue I'm not even trying. But you can find incredible analysis from people who you never would have heard from if it wasn't for the evolution of media, right? Again, Seth is as high up that mountaintop as I could point to, and we have a bunch of great analysts on this show who are born through the internet.
Just like a name that people know who's at a national level. Shams. Like Shams
Charania is an internet kid.
Yes, he got his job, or he started off on a blog, just working people right, trying to get just intel, news, trying to break any scoop. Got one, broke it. It was correct. Kept grinding, and now he works for the Athletic and Stadium. I think is
he
where
definitely
he
did work for Stadium for a long time.
I think he's doing like video stuff with Stadium, written stuff for the Athletic. Point being, like, he is a great example of somebody who is building, who is going to be the next Woj, right? Like, eventually Woj is going to retire, and it's just Shams.
I'm not an internet old fogey. I'm 27. Yeah. Okay, like I made the point talking to Kent this week.
You did your podcast.
Yes, I don't know if I'm here without that.
If not for that, which was on the internet,
but
people didn't know.
You can find great analysis in lots of different corners of the internet. You can find good information from fewer places, but still from some places. The thing that has bothered me a little bit today, I think I've cooled off some, but a thing that's bothered me a little bit today is this idea that everyone claiming to have a scoop should be treated as if they have the resume of Herbie. Because resume on news matters. And then if you put something out without a name attached to it, and I know at this point, blue checkmark has become derogatory in a weird world, in a weird way that I don't fully understand. But it's this idea of like this state-approved media outlet or whatever. We're going to get the real bleep from somewhere else.
It's kind of like, and this might be for more of an older audience, it's like pirate radio. Like, I don't even really know the whole pirate radio thing, but I've seen movies on it.
No,
that's what it's kind of become, right?
Right.
Like, if you don't have a blue check mark and you're reporting on news, you're telling the real news.
Right. And on some level, like if you're trying to build that up your ability to do that, that's one thing. But if we have to ask what your name is because we can't find it, there is something to the accountability of putting your name on the things that you do, because you do have stakes attached to that. And there has been sort of this, maybe it's a pirate radio sort of glamorization of I'm getting my, and this, I know this is happening throughout real news outside of the sports world, but in the sports world it's even more confusing to me. I'm getting the real stuff. I'm not getting what you sheeple are reading. Where it's like, but why? Like, if I exclusively had a bombshell report that I was ready to run with, that I thought was good information that I could make waves with, you guys know how much I love attention. You don't think I would run that?
Not because you're part of that sheeple news.
Yeah, I gotta tell you, if I am in the Illuminati, no one has told me yet. I keep waiting for the gift bag or the introductory gift package.
Fun fact: Josh actually knew the Chiefs were trading up for Mahomes in like 2013.
Yeah. Yeah, Mahomes was 12, I was 13, and I knew what was happening.
Yeah.
I don't think the dates, what you just said there, worked out, but I'm just,
Close enough.
It's just a very weird phenomenon that in this case, like, I think we've now heard from enough people with the reputation to back this up that this is not all hinging on a halftime altercation or a longer weird sort of thing that reads as a fan fiction about how Eric Bieniemy's amassed more power and that he big bleeped Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes, which I just don't. That's one thing from last night that I'm happy to bring back over again. Everybody who's taken the podium with the Chiefs that I can think of right now has made the point of Andy Reid's got 51% of the vote. Everybody knows that. And we talked about this last night. I don't want to fully retread that ground. But that can be a fact out of trust. That could be a fact out of control. There are elements to that, and I think that the fact that everyone volunteers that information is that, hey, we trust Andy Reid to have 51% of the vote here. But also, Andy Reid, I think in his mind, has earned that. And I mean, hard to argue. Again, is that always the best thing? I don't know. But I believe it to be true. A lot of the dynamics that were in that post they just don't track with knowing a little bit more than maybe most people would. And again, for me, that ends up in large part, I'm in the building when we're allowed in the building pretty regularly. And also, I know a lot of the people who are in the building more, right? Like that's just sort of, I'm not trying to be vague or even like sub-tweety or anything. Just telling you that it doesn't make a lot of that smelled funky. Now, the reason that you can also get away with some of that is this whole Eric Bieniemy situation right now has smelt kind of funky. It's all been weird. We talked about this last night as well. This is a weird situation. There is a offensive coordinator that has been the offensive coordinator for arguably, I'm not going to say definitively, but arguably the best 4-year stretch that any offensive coordinator has ever had in the history of offensive football. You have to split up that pie with Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes, obviously. But you have Eric Bieniemy's first year as offensive coordinator. His quarterback wins MVP and breaks some records.
His first year as a starter, mind you.
In his first year as a starter. Then after that Super Bowl victory, the offense actually holds up without Patrick Mahomes for a little bit, and they make all the way to end up winning the Super Bowl. Year after that, they're back in the Super Bowl again. Offensive line falls apart. They lose. Year after that, they make it to the AFC Championship game, and they lose in that game. The offense does struggle in the second half, obviously. It's weird for that guy to not get a head coaching job. If I went to go be Sean McVay's quarterback coach this offseason, I would have a head coaching job in 2 years. I'm not telling you I'd be good at that job. I think I'd be bad at that job. But I would have a head coaching job within 2 years.
Yeah, because the second time, and you may have said within 2 years. The first time was what I heard there. The second time, because I was about to chime in, you might have it sooner than 2 years.
Yep. Like, that is how that typically works. I don't hear the conversation of who do we give the credit to really ever around these other guys. But it comes up around Bieniemy all the time. There's more layers to that. But again, like it is a weird situation on the face. It doesn't mean that every butting head situation that you can dream up is actually the reason behind it all. And I think we'll have some real information on that before terribly long.
Well, one thing I just want to chime in, backtracking a little bit, because I just think it adds to the example. I love Liam Cohen. He's Kentucky's offensive coordinator. I'm a Kentucky football fan. He is getting credit for the Rams' success, and he's not even on the Rams coaching staff anymore, right? Like he is even reaping he is going to be a head coach. I was gonna, 2 weeks ago I said definitely in college, and now I don't think he's going to be a head coach in college football anymore because I'm pretty sure within 2 years he's going to be a head coach in the NFL. He is getting credit for the Rams' offensive success.
Yeah,
he was not on the Rams this last year.
Correct. Yep.
He is part of the Sean McVay coaching tree. He seems like an incredibly smart dude, but he is receiving credit that Eric Bieniemy does not get, and he's in college.
And I don't have much interest in relitigating Eric Bieniemy not being a head coach for the 5,000th time because we've covered that.
And
but
it hasn't changed. The reasons are still all the same.
It's undeniably a weird spot to be in, and he had a 1-year deal that he signed last offseason that kept him here through this year. And I think there are still plenty of arrays of outcomes where this could go. I just don't think, from what I know, Just don't think it's nearly as scandalous and titillating as the last 10 or last, I guess at this point now, 20 hours or so would have led you to believe. But that's, again, you shouldn't, you the reader shouldn't have to guess about if what you're reading is based on a true story, historical fiction, or the real deal. But that, that's where you're left, and so everyone has to make their own judgments off of that. You end up with this disparate, disheveled Chiefs Twitter experience that makes me think everybody should just log off for a day, which honestly we probably should do.
Did you know you can listen to Almost Entirely Sports anywhere, anytime? Well, you can. Just search for Almost Entirely Sports wherever you get your podcasts.
Geico presents.
This is Almost Entirely Sports with Joshua Briscoe
This whole segment has been kind of the first quarter of Chiefs Texans.
on Sports Radio 810 WHB.
I think I'll be able to push back from the buffet after this segment. But I want to address, I've seen this 1,000 places, and we have a comment in the Twitch as well. Maybe some BS or maybe not. I read the whole thing last night, and that it did feel like the shroud of the NFL and our beloved Chiefs getting pulled off for a few moments and seeing the truth. Craziest and juiciest Chiefs article I've ever read either way. And I think that's a great point, and it reminds me of a documentary that I was watching about the medieval times. And so it does this incredible job of setting the scene and kind of putting you into the headspace of what it must have been like before, all of the additions of modernity that you would get. And they got into some of the sort of geopolitical things. It was fascinating. It was grisly and raw and honest. And it really kind of dug out some of the dirt that you don't really think about being a part of world history. And so, it was recreated, of course, but it was still fascinating. And then, then you learn about the fact that there were dragons throughout that whole time of our history, and that really all of this ended up being for an Iron Throne that wasn't real. How juicy? Yeah, man, a story can be really juicy and also not. Yeah, like, what are we doing? That's not. I don't want to. I'm not trying to make anybody feel stupid. But if you say, hey, man, maybe that story was real, maybe it wasn't, but it sure was juicy. Cool, man. Watch a soap opera. Go watch Game of Thrones. Go watch Days of Our Lives. Hey, look, these people may or may not be real, but no, they're not. I mean, they're not, though, in this instance, right? You have to see the importance of the differentiation. You can't say maybe BS, maybe not, but no. You have to choose. You have to choose. Are you reading based on a true story? Are you reading an Abraham Lincoln biography, or are you reading Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter?
What's the difference?
Which one are you reading? And if the author doesn't tell you, that's on them. They've duped you because you're reading about how Abraham Lincoln went around and slayed vampires, and then you go tell your friends about how, wow, I mean, it's crazy to hear how Abraham Lincoln was a vampire hunter.
Duh. That was in my history books.
That's really on the author to make that clear to you. But if it's left up in the air and then you're the one that has to take it and translate it and put it back out there again, that becomes your burden of responsibility. It can be gripping content. The Last Dance wasn't all the truth, right? And that was documentary footage. Man in the Arena is not all of the truth, even though it's telling a great story with lots of true things. Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter is based on a real person who actually existed. And I'll tell you what, I have to imagine the vampire hunting aspect of that probably really adds an extra layer of interest to the Abraham Lincoln storyline. It doesn't make it more historically accurate. You can go read Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter if you want. I don't care. But if I tweet something about Abraham Lincoln and you say, well, in the book that I read, he killed effing vampires, don't come to me like I'm the moron here. That it is an important distinction. And again, I'm not trying to belittle anybody because I don't feel like, first of all, I don't feel like that convinces many people, and I don't really like doing that. I bet an Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter, Abraham Lincoln has the accurate beard and he's got the tall top hat, right? All right, great, based on a true story. There has to be a line somewhere between Abraham Lincoln, line, and Vampire Hunter. Please use that as you go about the rest of your week and weekend and months and years. It's going to be up to you to discern between those things pretty frequently if the author doesn't do it for you. But adding vampires makes the story more juicy. It does not make it more true. There is a difference. The story was cooler with vampires, though. I mean, for sure.
You are listening to Almost Entirely Sports with Joshua Briscoe on Sports Radio 810 WHB.
Race to savings for great deals going on now at Menards. Secure your home and save big with Menards' wide selection of TrueBolt lock sets and deadbolts. TrueBolt door locks provide homeowners, professional installers, and builders.
Entirely Sports with Joshua Briscoe.
Dan, it is. Dan, it is.
On Sports Radio 810 WHB.
Liners like that remind me of the fact that it kind of bums me out that most of our conversation topics with Daniel Lust, you can follow on Twitter at SportsLawLust. You can hear him and read him on Conduct Detrimental, at Con Detrimental for the Twitter for those places. But again, at SportsLawLust on Twitter. It bums me out, Dan, that a lot of our conversation topics end up being about very serious things when talking to you is actually a fun experience that can have laughs and enjoyment in a good radio segment. And then we usually end up in a, very dark place at some point. That's gotta wear on you. You seem like a saddled with very serious topics.
Well, I think that's the beauty and bad part of it being a lawyer. Sometimes what we do is not fun. It is serious, but we have some fun when we can, and sometimes we have some important stories. But I think, Josh, the thing about being a lawyer, usually when lawyers are involved, it's very good for one side, it's very bad for another side. This it seems to be in the latter territory.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot going on right now throughout the sports world, and today you get the worst of the stories with a payoff that, I don't know, I mean, maybe I'm showing my hand. I'm just like, it just seems like it's just sort of sadness and bad things stacked one on top of the other, but maybe you get a little bit of justice, perhaps, in the Tyler Skaggs story and everything that unpacks there from Major League Baseball. We can talk about some of the issues going on around the NFL as well, but with the MLB sort of unraveling of some of the issues that have been made more clear that are coming out of clubhouses, again, surrounding Tyler Skaggs' death from a couple years ago. I'll have to let you set the table of what you think people should know in a little bit of a little Cliff's Notes version of where this case ended up, and then the developments that we all saw today.
Yeah, so let's start with the big picture, right? I think people know the story, but why the story is important is what we can learn from history, right? That's why at least history is taught. We try to teach history so that it doesn't repeat itself. The story with Tyler Skaggs is obviously a tragic one. Tyler Skaggs, former top prospect, was kind of a fourth or fifth starter with the LA Angels. They go on a road trip to Texas, and Skaggs, was found dead in his hotel room. Just absolute tragedy. Recently married, and I think people know maybe just an interesting part of the story. The next, they have a Tyler Skaggs kind of Memorial Day at Angel Stadium, and the pitchers on the Angels combined for a team no-hitter on Tyler Skaggs' Remembrance Day, and they throw the jerseys on the mound. It's really picturesque. It's really kind of bittersweet. So, fast forward, the story of Tyler Skaggs kind of takes an interesting turn. A toxicology report comes up, and they find traces of drugs, specifically fentanyl and oxycodone in his blood, as well as alcohol. And the medical examiner rules the death to be an accidental asphyxiation, which, I don't want to get too marred in the details, but that's, someone choking. So it wasn't really clear if a crime occurred. It was accidental. And then the case kind of takes a turn. That's July of 2019. We're sitting here today, February of 2022. Obviously the Angels are in California. The California criminal, there's no crime in California. Of all places, Texas, where the incident occurred. Angels were on a road trip to play the Rangers when this happened. And Texas decides to take on the case. And you go from, hey, no one's going to press charges. This is just a kind of an accident that happened, to Eric Kay being convicted. That's the Angels communications director, to a minimum of 20 years in prison. So really kind of messy. It's the charges are distributing opioids or distributing fentanyl here that led to the death of another person and conspiracy to possess. So, yeah, certainly really messy, Josh. We can unpack the lessons here, how the testimony of the baseball players became involved, and really how Major League Baseball has changed their drug protocol as a result of this incident. But it's kind of one of these watershed moments for baseball.
Well, yeah, so that's exactly what it has sort of felt like, because even you get Matt Harvey, who is, giving his testimony, and that's a name that pretty much every baseball fan is going to have at least some point of reference for, which, it shouldn't necessarily matter, but you have stars and names you recognize on the stand, and it feels like it adds another element to it. And it, to me, following from mostly through tweets I've seen from you and Dan Wallach and the work that you guys have done at Conduct Detrimental, Also, conductdetrimental.com, by the way. Kind of following through you guys and some of the reporting that TJ Quinn had done and all of that, it does feel like there's a bit of a watershed moment for Major League Baseball. It does not feel like this is a one-off tragedy, especially once you connect the dots to Eric Kay and being a member of the Angels organization. Do you think that you use the word watershed first? Walk me through that, what you think the implications are and will be throughout Major League Baseball, and also what we've learned about Major League Baseball players, opioid culture, the issues that have kind of come to the surface through this case.
Yeah, it's twofold. So let's go back to July of 2019. The first change from Tyler Skaggs by December of 2019, so about 5 months. Major League Baseball and the Major League Baseball Players Association amended their joint drug program to actually test for the first time for opioids and fentanyl. Obviously, if people are paying attention to it, there is an opioid problem in our country now, and the death of Tyler Skaggs happened at a time when it was kind of at a fever pitch. So baseball said we're going to test for opioids. They're not testing for opioids, in the way that we would test for steroids or any type of PEDs, performance-enhancing drugs. If you actually test positive for opioids, this joint drug program said you're going to be sent to some evaluation. You're going to go to a treatment panel, and they're going to decide what your course of treatment is. And the only time you'll face any discipline is if you don't abide by that treatment plan. So it's not popped for 10 games or 20 games. They're trying to work with you. So that was the first thing that happened in 2019. We haven't really heard of any positive opioid tests in that 2-year period. So if you were listening to this and you didn't realize they passed that, it's because I don't think anyone tested positive. Sports Illustrated confirmed that this week. And said no positive test for opioids. So you could say, hey, baseball has solved the opioid problem, or maybe they're not testing frequently enough, who knows. But Josh, here's where it gets kind of tricky. You could say baseball solves it, no positive test. But you have guys like Matt Harvey, C.J. Cron, you go down the list. There was testimony from Trevor Cahill, a former Kansas City Royal, just to the party culture and drug use, maybe sometimes in the clubhouse. The drugs were being provided by a staffer. So this story was kind of swept under the rug in 2019. But you have that testimony, right? Matt Harvey was a big Mets pitcher.
Right.
There are stories, I'm hearing them the last couple of days, that Harvey was, drinking on game days and doing stuff he shouldn't have been doing. So Harvey's probably the guy that is going to be made an example of here. I'm hearing anywhere upwards of a 60-game suspension just because he looks bad for Major League Baseball. But there's 5 or 6 guys that are tied to the story that might also face some type of discipline. So I call it a watershed moment because when you have these, it's not so crazy that someone gets made an example of. Maybe they'll change the rules again. But there's certainly much more attention to the Trevor Skaggs, the drug problem today than I think there was in 2019, as crazy as that sounds.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that idea that, hey, they've put this new process in place and it's produced nothing in terms of positives or results or whatever. I mean, again, through the ears of an amateur, that sounds to me like the process put into place has not been catching the people that need to be caught. And I don't say need to be caught in the criminal sense, but in the, like you said, sending to a treatment plan sort of sense. Do you get the feeling now that there will be follow-up steps from Major League Baseball outside of just punishing Matt Harvey?
Well, here's the thing, and this is probably the most important thing I can tell you guys. The story's not going away. There is, and this is the easiest way, and Josh, we can have some education on, even with the sad story. The O.J. Simpson case, people will know, there's a criminal case, and then there's a civil case. So that's how O.J. beat the criminal charges, then he lost in civil court, so he owed money. We're moving on to that phase, and that's why I don't think Major League Baseball is going to make any type of determination yet. This case, Josh, did not involve the Los Angeles Angels. It involved a former employee of the Angels, not the Angels. The next 2 cases are 2 civil cases, one brought in California, one brought in Texas, wrongful death cases brought by Tyler Skaggs' family in 2 different states that name the Angels directly. And they name them directly because this guy, Eric Kay, under their watch, who's now a criminal, he was providing drugs, and the allegations go back years. So now the Angels are going to be on trial as this next phase moves on. We move to the civil case. But certainly not the last time you're going to be hearing about this case, the same type of players and some really kind of heart-wrenching testimony. Matt Harvey, I'm sure, is going to get called back to the stand. The same same type of arguments here. But the issue then in the civil case is going to be money. How much money should go to Tyler Skaggs' family as a result of maybe a death that was avoidable, that was caused by Eric Kay, who's now going to be in prison, I'm sure, by that point, by the Angels. So baseball is going to have to now watch out for the Angels. That's why the Angels put out a statement today. It was very muted. They didn't give that much color because, as they say, right, everything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. Angels got to be really careful here, and it might be signaling some problems in the Angels organization. I'm not sure if this goes further than them.
Yeah, that's a good point. This is a real catch-all here just because I don't want to miss something that you think is important before we move on to some of the other stuff going on in the sports law sort of collision. But is there anything else around this particular case that you think people should know as we're trying to figure out the best way to talk about this, what to keep an eye out for going forward as that case eventually comes around?
I think you hit it. I think we addressed it. At the end of the day, it's really messy. I've learned a lot about the different opioids involved, Percocet versus OxyContin versus fentanyl, how someone could try to give someone counterfeit opioids, and then it's kind of laced with a really much more dangerous substance like fentanyl. So I guess the lesson learned, and Matt Harvey testified to this, you don't really know what, if you're using, any type of substance that you're getting off the street, right, that's illegal, you don't know what's in it. And Matt Harvey's testimony was really kind of, eye-opening. He said, when he found out the news about Tyler Skaggs, he, disposed of whatever he had on him. So maybe that's the important lesson. There is some, this obviously for everyone to learn here.
Well, so then let's pivot to the NFL. And the fun thing is I could say, hey, let's pivot to the NFL. And you might be going, oh, God, which of the 4 or 5 current ongoing issues will we start with? But the one that I almost ended up texting you about, whatever this was, a week or two ago, to see if you'd come around and talk about the Brian Flores case, which is now also sort of turning into a Miami Dolphins case, because if Stephen Ross was actually offering Brian Flores money to lose, that seems like a legitimately large problem for the NFL, not even to speak of the other allegations that come through that lawsuit and what Brian Flores is alleging and what the league clearly has a problem in terms of having a very monochromatic group of head coaches. That's something that that Roger Goodell has said as much, at a podium, that, hey, this is an actual issue. The specifics in Flores' lawsuit, though, I know go kind of a different direction. If I take you back a week or two, whenever the Brian Flores lawsuit drops at the beginning of this month, whenever you go 30,000-foot view, what's being alleged, what they're going to have to try to prove, what's sort of the big picture view of specifically the lawsuit from Brian Flores' position and the position that puts the NFL in?
Yeah, so this one, I've obviously spent a lot of time with. So here at a high level, this is a lawsuit about racial discrimination. Don't let, and the Stephen Ross stuff comes up in the lawsuit, but just so everyone's clear, if you showed me a check from Stephen Ross that's made out for $100,000 to Brian Flores and says, "Hey, week 1 loss, good job, Brian," it's pretty big, but it doesn't prove a case of racial discrimination. So, I understood why Brian Flores' attorneys did it. They started a narrative, and it puts a lot of pressure on the Dolphins, but it has very little to do with the lawsuit. Same thing, Josh, which I'm sure your listeners are aware of. There were these kind of like, they made him seem like smoking gun. These texts with Bill Belichick and Brian Flores that, Bill Belichick, the guy is pretending or thinking he's texting Brian Daboll. He's actually texting Brian Flores. Certainly those texts are important. Brian Flores claims that that's the only way he knew that he was having a sham investigation with the Giants, because Belichick tried to tell Daboll, congrats on getting the job. Another one that I'm not sure is going to be that relevant at the end of the day, Bill Belichick works for the Patriots, right? He doesn't work for the Giants, certainly can't speak for the Giants, and legally, right, he's not actually capable of speaking on behalf of the Giants, a different organization. Josh, that's as if you said something bad on air, right, in your rival station. We're not going to mention them here, Josh. We're not going to say it.
I appreciate that. That's you being a good lawyer.
Yeah, I know what I'm doing, but it's as if those guys would get in trouble for something you said. It doesn't make sense. So the 2 big things that people, stuck their flag in, the Stephen Ross, it's a really big deal, and the texts are a big deal. And not really. So just so we can kind of, take that out. From a high level, I think the most interesting thing here that us lawyers were talking about, the decision to file the lawsuit while he was still interviewing for other jobs. I think there were 5 vacancies at that point on the Tuesday after the conference championship game. Josh, by the way, how do you feel after the conference championship game? We didn't talk about this.
I've been better. I've been. We went to Radio Row. I had a good time out there. You know, I'm doing okay, but it's been had better football days in our recent past.
We'll talk about the overtime rules at a later point in time.
That sounds good. I'd litigate that with you as well.
So I think from a really high level, he doesn't get these jobs, right, because I think he files a lawsuit. I think it's pretty clear. The Texans, he was the front runner for the job. He was in consideration for the Saints job, and he doesn't get it. The question is, had he not filed that lawsuit, would he have gotten those jobs? Would he have kind of had this proverbial moment where he's, getting his cake and eating it too? He's the head coach of the Texans and then filing the lawsuit. So within our legal circles, there's been a lot of criticism of the lawyers involved here, of the decision to file so early, maybe win the headlines, but you're putting Flores in a situation where he's interviewing with the Texans while he's also suing the Texans. It was never going to work out. So that's maybe the high level. I think those are the most important issues here.
Well, so within that as well, again, please correct me if I'm wrong, but from the jump, it seems like some of the details of what they were bringing in that suit and having some criticisms of how the lawyers have handled this so far kind of tracked with where I'm headed. But it seemed like there was a push to, as you said, kind of get that narrative out in front of people. And again, the NFL, Roger Goodell himself has made the point of, like, we would like to have more black head coaches that more accurately represent our black workforce, right? So there's some obvious truth to that. But also, as a layman, reading some of that and trying to figure out, hey, is there something that carries legal water in here right now? It seems like there's a lot of dots left to connect. Is that fair? Do you think that there's a legal case in the version of the documents basically that they put out on that day, or was that more of something trying to get the ball rolling where maybe their case grows before anybody actually has to hear it?
Well, I think Josh, your inquisitive mind is paying off here. I think you figured out where I'm going with this. I think there is certainly a problem in the NFL. The NFL had this really bad statement that came out with an hour after the lawsuit that Brian Flores' claims are without merit.
Yeah, and they had that in an hour.
Yeah, and I'm like, okay, so what's without merit? The claims that there's a lack of diversity in the NFL? I mean, that's pretty much with merit.
Yes.
Or that somehow you guys figured out that there's no merit to Stephen Ross's tanking claims within an hour? That was the quickest investigation of all time.
Right. Insane.
So they got rightfully dinged for those two. What the NFL, I think, meant to say is that there is no merit to Brian Flores' actual claim, just for the reasons I told you. Hey, the Bill Belichick texts don't really mean anything. The fact that John Elway might have been hungover and late to a Denver Broncos interview, it doesn't mean it was a sham interview. It just means he was late or really maybe unprepared at best. And in the Dolphins, it wouldn't be the first time a coach was fired with a winning record. I remember, Marty Schottenheimer, when we were growing up, Josh, he got fired after going 12-4 with the Chargers, Caucasian head coach. So none of those three things by themselves prove racism. So I think where my mind goes with this is that the NFL is in this weird area where Brian Flores might not have a case, but there is certainly an issue with racial discrimination, you'd think, in the NFL. Just the numbers don't lie. Yeah. So this is where I think, where the case goes. Brian Flores, I think, has enough to get into what we call discovery, to poke around, to maybe take depositions of Bill Belichick and Daboll and the Giants and the Bills and Elway, right? Some big names, but he's still got to connect the dots, right? Nothing I've seen so far proves the case. But we haven't talked about it, Josh. This is filed, and it's not final, but it's proposed as a class action lawsuit, which will allow coaches of past and present, a guy that's in your neck of the woods, Eric Bieniemy, is mentioned in the complaint. So that would allow guys like Marvin Lewis, Hugh Jackson, Tony Dungy, to the extent he felt that they were aggrieved in any way, shape, or form, they could join this lawsuit. And then, Josh, it becomes a situation not like Colin Kaepernick, 1 versus 32 teams, or even back in the day with Curt Flood, one guy versus Major League Baseball. Then it could be a situation of tens, if not maybe even 100 former head coach and general manager applicants going after the NFL. So, this case is just taking shape, and it really does have the potential to be an unprecedented case in terms of a volume perspective, with 100 coaches going after the NFL simultaneously. Yeah. I mean, it could be, right, in theory, right, 100 times larger than the Colin Kaepernick case. Yeah.
If we get to there, we will have plenty to talk about around any of those signposts, particularly with the Stephen Ross thing. Again, if we found a check where in the memo line said "good job for losing," that would probably be a pretty big deal. But I mean, is there any even question in your mind that if that allegation ends up being credible, that they can't let Stephen Ross keep the team at that point, right? Especially with where we're at with gambling right now.
Yeah, I'm hearing the same thing. I'm hearing that in NFL circles, it's established that will be the first time in professional sports that an owner could be voted out. It's never happened. Donald Sterling, the probate court kicked him out. Even you go back to Jerry Richardson with the Carolina Panthers. He voluntarily sold his team amidst racial allegations. So yeah, I mean that's a Pete Rose one, right? You can't put financial incentive on a game. The weird thing, Josh, this isn't all. Sometimes we can just ask some interesting questions, right? Financial incentive, like Pete Rose, right? The allegation was that he bet on his own team to lose or to win, whatever it is. Stephen Ross is providing an incentive to lose games. Now, no one's really brought this up, and obviously I do it on your show because I know you're a critical thinker, Josh.
I appreciate that. Yeah, ready to go.
We provide incentive for our coaches to win games, right? There's certainly incentives if you make the playoffs, you win 10 games. Pete Rose was banned from baseball for betting, right? Was winning or losing, who cares? Baseball doesn't matter. But we do provide incentive for our coaches to sometimes win, and it's not that crazy, right? In the NIL context, which I know you guys follow, you can't give any incentives, positive or negative. There's no pay for play. The guy can't have any type of performance incentives, good or bad, in the NIL context. But I guess when it comes to football, they're okay with positive incentives, but not negative incentives. So, it's maybe a little bit of a catch-22 here.
I do think that's interesting because, the implication of that is that anything good that happens is something we're okay endorsing, right? Which, on the face I understand. But if you are, I think Chris Jones needed 1 sack in the last game of this regular season I think it was like $1 million, and I don't believe he got that sack. Like those performance positive incentives are not just a regular part of contracts, but oftentimes are little workarounds. Sammy Watkins' contract with the Chiefs, like there was this idea of, if he performs a little bit better, well, he's actually going to have some money that ends up on the next year's salary cap, even though he wouldn't be a Chief anymore, because that's where those numbers go. Likely to be earned versus not likely to be earned incentives. And also, I would make an argument on a more esoteric level, perhaps. We incentivize losing too because you get better draft picks. That would be the logic of Stephen Ross offering to pay that out. So I don't know. Do you think that there might be, as you say, a catch-22, that there might be an argument somewhere in for a negative? Negative is a loaded word, but for a negative incentive, if it was the right thing for the team, because if the Dolphins have Justin Herbert instead of Tua right now, who knows? Or if they would have gotten a Joe Burrow, obviously they could have taken Herbert. If they would have gotten Joe Burrow instead of Tua, that organization's in a better place, despite the fact that it would have cost them some regular season losses.
Yeah, the obvious ones too, right? With Brady and Gronkowski, right? They were just kind of padding the stats at the end of that last regular season game. So certainly it happens that manipulating the results of the game in a way that money is being changed hands. It's not new, but I guess you can't do it if you're losing. So, we're kind of, there might be some seeds of credibility to this, and I'm hearing that Stephen Ross is going to claim, I think there's a witness that overheard this conversation. There's no texts or emails as far as I'm aware, but there is some type of witness that Stephen Ross, I guess, is going to claim that he said it as a joke, he said it in jest. But Josh, to your point, tanking is not just an issue in football. Tanking is an issue in baseball. Tanking is an issue in basketball. There are collective bargaining agreements, or discussions over the labor table about, hey, how can we stop teams from losing on purpose to get better draft picks?
Yeah.
So it would be odd if Brian Flores is the only guy in professional sports where this occurred. And there's certainly a conversation, which I know you've been following, your neighbors over in St. Louis, about whether there was an allegation or whether some purposeful losing on behalf of Stan Kroenke, the St. Louis Rams, their last 9 years there. They lost 9 losing seasons in a row, which kind of helps them leave to go from St. Louis to Los Angeles because they had bad attendance. They wanted to leave. And then all of a sudden they're an 11-5 team, and they've won 5 straight seasons, capped off by the Super Bowl. So I think there might be a widespread investigation into tanking, especially, Josh, again, with the sports betting landscape. I think you need to put a bright spotlight on it. And if money is being changed hands and now exchanged, Congress is investigating the Washington Commanders and Dan Snyder. It wouldn't be so far-fetched for them to dip their toe in here and see if other owners are providing some type of incentive.
Let's hop over to Washington here real quick, and then I'll let you go. There's been a number of things around that organization a number of times. One thing, though, that I've seen catch the headlines frequently, and when it comes up on Twitter, people have, I would argue, a rightful sort of like, are you bleeping kidding me? sort of reaction to the idea that the NFL would need Dan Snyder, or even legally would need Dan Snyder's approval to release some of these documents publicly. I don't understand that. I don't know how we've gotten here. There's plenty I don't understand around Dan Snyder and Washington at this point. Tell me what you think is interesting, what is noteworthy, and I guess what is absurd, which is sort of, again, the reaction that I have to some of the idea that Dan Snyder needs to give the thumbs up for everyone to see how miserable that franchise has been run in a lot of ways.
So I know the story you were referencing, and it was probably more confusing than it was helpful. The NFL and Dan Snyder were trying to claim that they each had some type of, we'll say, attorney-client privilege amongst themselves, and that was their excuse why they couldn't provide documents to Congress. It doesn't really matter. It's an invented privilege that the NFL and Dan Snyder created amongst themselves to try to prevent giving these emails. Here's the most important part, Josh. Ready? Remember in math, right? There was that like greater than versus less than sign, like looks like a little crocodile eating something else.
That's how I remembered it. Yeah, the crocodile wanted to eat the bigger number.
Crocodile wants to eat the bigger number. Okay, so in this case, Congress is the crocodile. It is more important than any attorney-client privileges. Congress will trump anything here. So if Congress really wants to, everyone's saying hashtag release the report, a report that allegedly gave a recommendation from the attorney, Beth Wilkinson, who was investigating Washington. The recommendation was for Snyder to sell the team. So hashtag release the report, hashtag release these 650,000 emails, the ones where the John Gruden bad emails came from. Hashtag release everything. If Congress wants them, that little crocodile is more important than this NFL Snyder privilege nonsense. So these emails, the report, it looks like they're coming out. And there's similarly a conversation that's circling around the Washington organization. If, we'll say, if Stephen Ross is quality, right, an allegation of tanking $100,000 per loss, it's pretty bad. Dan Snyder is quantity, sexual harassment, sexual assault. He had the whole issue with the name bungling, and there's many lawsuits, the Sean Taylor stuff when they kind of threw his retirement in a weird place to kind of distract from the team. A lot of bad things with Snyder. So actually, at least what I'm hearing, Josh, there are two conversations occurring simultaneously that one or both are in hot water and might not get the protection of the NFL anymore.
Here's my last one for you on the way out. Do you think there is a path for any of those things to be big enough to actually ding the NFL in a meaningful way?
Probably not. Let's just be honest.
Crazy. It's crazy.
Probably not.
Because it's a ton. We could literally do this. I mean, you guys do it on the podcast, conduct.detrimental.com as well. There is so much to talk about all the different ways that we are throwing an empty soda can at a bullet train.
Yeah, you're not wrong. We can talk about how Washington did all this bad stuff, and then it doesn't really matter. Here's the thing, though. Once the games start being played, once you're going Sunday to Sunday, nobody cares anymore. But you're in this interesting zone, and that's why the Brian Flores, it was good timing, right? The Washington stuff was happening last week. There's no distractions right now until you have the draft. So people will care now, but I don't know, come August, we see how people react. NFL keeps getting bigger and better and making more money from these TV deals. So I don't think so. I mean, truthfully, Josh, it might result in people getting divested of their teams, but I don't think it's going to make people stop watching football. And it hasn't for decades. I don't see that starting.
Speaking of just continually getting bigger and badder, you can follow Dan on Twitter at SportsLawLust. You can follow the Conduct Detrimental podcast, everything they do there, at ConDetrimental on Twitter. Subscribe to Conduct Detrimental wherever you get your podcast, ConductDetrimental.com for a bunch of their written work. Tremendous work that you guys have been doing. It's kept me plugged into stuff that otherwise I don't know that I would be able or interested, frankly, in trying to keep up with. Rudy made this point before this segment that I'm going to just say this might be our last ever time talking to Dan, not because we would stop calling you, but that eventually you're just going to become too big, too powerful, and you're going to stop returning my texts.
You can always humble me, and Rudy, next time I come on, you can play the intro where I say duty over and over, and only you guys will get that joke.
I have
only
that
you
too.
guys will get that. You couldn't play it today for obvious reasons, but you have my permission next time.
We started very serious today, and we made it to here, but I can't wait to bring that back. Humbling you back with this show is perfect, Dan. That is fantastic. You're the best, man. Thank you for making some time for us tonight. I appreciate it.
Night, guys. Anytime.
he does such good work, and you can hear in the conversation, man. He's just as good as it gets. He and Dan Wallach both do a tremendous job with Conduct Detrimental. If you want more of this in audio form, check out the podcast. You want to read it, or just follow them on Twitter. You will accidentally learn more than you ever knew you could learn by accident about the sports law world. I just think that both those guys do an unbelievable job. At Sports Law Lust on Twitter to follow Dan. We'll talk about some of that maybe, and who knows what else whenever we come back here on Almost Entirely Sports.
Take the show with you wherever you go. Listen live on the Sports Radio.
me one of the little, here we go, which is great. Depending on, this is something inside radio. You'll understand why I sound the way that I do here currently as well.
I'm just really caught up over that last segment still.
I just love talking to Dan so much. I do, actually.
I would say that is
That's true. Yeah, I mean, it is. I just think he's a a rising star.
We spent most of the break talking about Dan because
Literally true.
he's great, except for like the last 10 seconds.
We were talking about Dan, and then Rudy gave me a, here we go. But, sometimes we get it back in 30, back in a minute, here we go.
I tried to give a back in one at the very least. I forgot to give the back in one because I like to give a back in one. I want the host to essentially know that, okay, whatever I need to do before the show or before the segment comes back, before we come back, I got to talk. I got some time. I can go, like, let's do this. And then my here we go is usually a 10-second thing.
Right.
That's usually. Now, sometimes I catch it at 7. Usually it's a 10.
And for me, it means, last commercial, don't
sure.
do anything that's going to make it to where you can't be doing radio in 10 seconds.
Don't go run out into the hallway.
Exactly.
Or if you do it fast.
Do it quickly. So I bring that up. That's all stuff that happens behind the scenes, We're basically Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce. Frankly, I'm cool being either. Mm-hmm. Doesn't really matter to me.
And I'm just McCole Hartman.
No, you're one of the two. I'm saying you're one of the
okay.
two.
I
We're on
thought
the
you
same.
were both.
No, I'm
Gotcha.
saying
Thought personality 1 was Patrick. Personality 2 was Kelce.
Dick Justice is Tyreek Hill.
Yeah, I'm a running back who's basically a wide receiver.
You're Jerick McKinnon.
I just dragged Clyde. That was rude. I like Clyde.
Whatever it is, we're on the same page pretty frequently, especially for stuff like the technical little things. Like, again, whenever we started that segment with Dan, I realized my mic wasn't on before Rudy did.
Yes. Technically your mic was on. It was just I had it potted down for whatever reason. I turned it on but forgot to push the pot up.
Whatever it was, I can tell the difference in total silence. If Rudy were to turn off my microphone, I was going to sit in silence for a second. I can tell that when I waited. You heard just that I stopped. Mm-hmm. He turned it off. I could wait until it came back on again before I would start speaking, because we got those little details. Anyway, this time though, Flim. I'm glad that was comedically perfect. This time though, Rudy said, "Here we go," and I had, I think, 1.5 peanut butter Ritz crackers just shoved into my mouth.
Maybe the worst thing to be eating.
I could have been eating a sleeve of saltines, and that's the only, at least there's a little bit of peanut butter filling.
Because if it had been almost anything else, right? Like I like to eat a salad. A salad you can get down in like 2 seconds, right? Like you can finish off what you're eating.
I had a mini, I had a thin York patty during one of Dan's answers during the segment.
Yep.
In this case, the Ritz are they're not a quick, easy, scarf one down, be ready to do radio again kind of foods. The reason for that, I actually was telling Rudy in the talk back, I was like, I needed to tell you just what's going on because you're around me the second most out of anyone in my life, is that early yesterday, I got my trial set up for the Omnipod. We're talking diabetes stuff now. And
mark it off on the bingo card. That's the peanut butter.
That's the peanut butter. So Omnipod is like a little wearable insulin pump. So it literally sticks on. It's on my arm, kind of shoulder. Right, I'm wearing a sweater. You can't see it, but it sticks onto your arm, and you just have to swap them out for new ones every 3 days, and you fill them up with insulin and all of that. And the idea of it is amazing because I have just been very, I don't want to say even hesitant. I just don't like the idea of a tubed insulin pump, partially because I've seen my mom be furious with hers for many points over our lives. But also, I don't know, it feels kind of restricting and kind of tethering and everything. And like my little Dexcom that checks my blood sugar and the Omnipod, which are both stickable, wearable things, they can be inconvenient. It's not as good as having your pancreas inside your body, but it's better for me, at least right now, I think, than having the tubes. The issue is that I'm just working on new Omnipod stuff and trying to get my numbers all right and everything. And right like a minute into talking to Dan, my watch buzzes and like, "Yo, hey, your blood sugar's like really low. You want to do something about that, moron?" It's like, well, not really. I'm talking right now.
Not the best. Maybe you couldn't have told me this like 10 minutes sooner.
Yeah, if you tell me 10 minutes earlier, 10 minutes later, that would have been helpful.
It's okay.
But because I'm getting a regular like drip, for lack of a better word, regular drip of insulin, as opposed to what I've been doing up until yesterday, which I've got those pin needles, and I just poke myself with about as many units as I think I need.
With a ton of it, right? It's more of my understanding is,
instead
of getting a steady dose essentially throughout the day, it is enough to get you by for hours at a time.
Well, since you asked, Rudy,
I did ask.
two different types of insulin
Okay.
that I was using. Right now, I'm
It's
just
good
using
for
the
me
one.
to know, because if you all of a sudden fall to the floor in the
Yeah.
studio, that's bad.
Yeah.
I should know some of these things.
So what I had been doing,
And viewer/listener, if I'm not paying attention
Yeah.
and you see Josh drop,
if I'm
you should
unconscious
also
in
know
this
these
chair,
things so that you can
Yeah.
put it in chat. Hey, Rudy, go check on Josh. He hasn't actually said anything for 20 minutes. Stop playing on your phone.
stop playing Legends. Although honestly, he would probably understand.
Yeah. Josh would get that.
But so
Especially if there was a shiny involved.
definitely,
Then of course.
definitely.
Hey, Josh, I give you permission. If your options are catch the shiny, fill in the blank, unless it's like a shiny Geodude, actually. Shiny Geodudes,
gonna
they
say,
don't, basically don't count.
I would not let you die for any shiny Pokemon.
Oh, wow.
Many, yes. Most, not sure. If I get, if there's a shiny
Yeah.
Piplup or even an Alpha,
Let me go.
perhaps,
Just let me go.
I gotta
Let
go
me-
catch it.
I'd be mad if you saved me and lost that Pokemon.
That's kind of how that's
I'd be
yeah.
upset. Let me go.
But if it's it's a
Zubat.
shiny Caterpie, I'll throw one Pokeball and let it ride.
Give
you
it the
know,
old college try.
Yeah.
And we'll see what it looks like when we get back.
I guess if I hit the home button, maybe it'll pause everything right there and just sort of minimize the game. But
But do you want to take that risk?
that's a great question. But so I had a long-acting insulin that I would take every night, a bunch of, and then it slowly kind of releases itself over the course of the day to kind of keep you even and everything. And there's a faster-acting insulin that you just take if you're going to have some carbs, right? Well, and so in the pod, I'm taking, this is not medical advice, and I'm not an official spokesperson of any of these companies, just so everyone is clear, just my experience with the things. I got to do that occasionally because this is like actually real bleep, right? But so with the pod, it's just the faster acting insulin, but it's set up to do a little bit every hour all day. And then also I can go into basically it's just a simplified Android phone that I've got here. It's like an Android phone running one app, but it is legit running Android. I can go in and also be like, hello phone, I'm about to have Shake Shack in an airport. And instead of having to pull a pin out of my fanny pack and then jab that into my belly and then hope that I got those numbers right,
Which also just doesn't seem fun, having to constantly poke yourself with a needle.
I don't love it.
Yeah.
I wouldn't do it recreationally. But I can go into the phone now and just be like, hello, I'd like to actually have, I'm about to be a naughty boy. I'm going to have 60 carbs with this meal, which, believe it or not, if you start looking at your carb count and everything, this pack of Ritz crackers, 6 Ritz crackers, this is my life now, everybody. 22 carbs in this pack of Ritz crackers here. But if I was going to have a meal like, I'm going to have 60 grams of carbs, I can go into the little phone, and I can enter my carbs, and I can say I'm going to have 60 carbs. And my blood sugar right now, oh, please don't start this. I'm not eating 60 carbs, phone. We're good. But I'm going to eat 60 carbs. It's like, I'll give you 4 units of insulin. That's perfect.
Watch Josh accidentally give himself too much insulin.
Hey,
on air.
Siri, light me up! Cut it loose, Siri! Pump that bleep! I'm going to Olive Garden! My pod's about to expire. I got some insulin left in there. Give me unlimited breadsticks! I'm snorting breadcrumbs! But I could, go in and I would also enter my blood sugar and be like, oh, here's how many units of insulin we think you need for you to eat these carbs and everything. And it's been good, but having a new system instead of having the Lantus, the long-acting one that just sort of gives me a set amount before I go to bed and then kind of trickles along throughout the day, this has been a little different. So I've just, so far I've been honestly like very happy and borderline excited about it, as I'm another step closer to being great value Tony Stark, by the way. But it's just a little learning curve. But also weirdly, I felt totally fine at a blood sugar of 60. And sometimes if I just don't eat for a while also, I guess, I'll get to like 80 and feel kind of weird. This diabetes thing, somebody should really look into it. Someone should really look into making it work. Also, here's a little geek moment also, the next Omnipod has been cleared by the FDA, and that one communicates directly with your monitor. And so if it saw that I was at 60, it'd be like, yo, hold on a second. You don't need any more of this little stuff. I'm going to keep right here in this little reservoir. Or it could say, hey, moron, your blood sugar's 250 because you ate marshmallows on the couch for an hour. Would you like us to do something about that?
And you're just like, nah.
Like, nah, man,
Yeah, go get me more marshmallows.
Yeah. Hey, if technology was good, you'd bring me more marshmallows. Anyway, so I was trying to speed run some Ritz crackers during the break, so I didn't,
Could talk.
so I could just speak, I guess.
Just
Yeah.
use words.
Yeah. It's weird. It's a weird thing. The whole experience has been very strange.
Radio?
Yeah, doing radio and having to stay conscious and continue talking for 3 straight hours.
The things, the weird like skills you pick up, like my
Yeah.
ability to go to the bathroom and wash my hands for a full 20 seconds. And I know I always wash my hands for a full 20 seconds because my Apple Watch lets me know
Yeah.
that I've been washing my hands for a full 20 seconds.
That's awesome.
I could knock out that whole process in under a minute now because of this job.
The issue is we have to keep asking him to stop doing this. Is Rudy has fully exposed himself in the hallway in the process of doing
Not
that.
true. The process is also zipping up the pants. Like, it's just you learn to get these things done fast.
Rudy does sit down he pulls his underwear up, but he does sit down at the board with his pants around his ankles to get that whole process
Not
done that
true.
quickly. But you're decent at that point. It's just that's the way the process goes for you to be back in that chair as quickly as you are, and then
No,
you
to
can.
be fair, I don't do that before 5 p.m. But after 5, when this place is cleared out, then I mean it's fair game.
Oh.
I mean, after 5, we own this place basically.
Hey, this is a total left turn, but I thought I figured this out. I'm sorry that I'm kind of a slow moron sometimes, but I actually wanted to mention this.
Never.
I know, it's shocking. I actually wanted to mention this on the show, but I was going to confirm what I think I've now seen through the Twitch. Andy Stash on Twitch. We've seen a regular Twitch viewer, and several days ago, but I didn't see it because it was in my DMs.
So yeah, I think I saw him mention it like maybe yesterday. and
I
I meant to bring it up, and then the last hour happened.
Look, it's good that he also DM'd Seth and BJ because they apparently are better at checking their DMs than I am.
Andy, we're not smart.
Yeah, it's not.
We have
it's
very,
not our fault.
very small attention spans, which is why it's smart to reach out to BJ and Seth because they're grown-ups
Who check their
who
messages.
can actually have an attention span and like check on things. Whereas we think about it, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, like I'm gonna go do this thing. I'm gonna plan out my day right. I have a schedule, I have a routine, and then next thing I know, I've just been sitting in my chair playing Pokemon Legends for 3 straight hours. I'm like, man, maybe I should go to work.
Okay, so also, his name isn't Andy. His Twitch name is about Andy's mustache.
Yes.
His name is Troy, though.
I've just been calling him Andy because
That's fine, but I know his name now.
Yes, I did not. I just know him as Andy Stash, so that's why I said Andy.
So, Andy Stash / Troy, there's a tweet that I'm going to go grab again because Seth got to it first and Seth tweeted it out. But
Shout out to Troy.
There's a GoFundMe set up for Troy and his family that had their house burned down overnight, and they lost their dog, who also woke them up to alert them to the fire, which obviously is miserable. But I'm going to go retweet that out again at JB Briscoe here in just a second. So if you are in a place where you think, hey, not only can we help out somebody who's, a Chiefs fan, Chiefs Kingdom and all that, but even rougher, apparently a regular Almost Entirely Sports listener and viewer. So if we can't kind of pull up our own that way, I don't know what the bleep we're doing out here.
You mean to tell me we could actually get a good Chiefs Kingdom Twitter story
Yeah,
from this?
and
And
that-
actually be again, good, that helps somebody?
And that Almost Entirely Sports as a base could actually do something positive for the world.
Makes
I
me
know
feel
it
good.
sounds insane.
Makes me feel good.
But I'm gonna put that tweet back out, and there's more details and everything up on the GoFundMe. But I wanted to make that point. So Troy, thank you for being here. Also, you said the airport story was worth it, though.
It
Look,
was good. It was a good story.
it really I don't know. In the whole mix of it all, a little part of me was sort of tickled by the idea that it's not just a person on Twitter and all that, but somebody who needs some help within our little Almost Entirely community.
Yeah.
I was double checking on that today, and I saw as I was reading the tweet or the Twitch chat that Troy had also messaged me on Twitter, and we've got the verification done between the two accounts, that we've got to be able to do something for a fellow almost entirely sports listener and his family that could really use some help right now. So I'm going to retweet that out during the break. If you don't see it, if you're listening on the podcast, you won't have to scroll very far. I'll quote tweet it, and so you'll be able to find it there. And let's see if we can't go give Troy and his family a little bit of help. God knows they deserve it, just from the fact that they've been listening to this show for some period of time. And Troy, if God forbid your family's had to listen to any of this show,
I mean, to be fair, any of our regular listeners should probably be allowed to start a GoFundMe just for like trauma from the show listening to us.
Hi, I'm trying to raise some money so I can afford to listen to better radio shows.
Anybody else?
Anything else. But yeah, let's see if we can't give Troy and his family a little bit of help. I'll tweet that out during the break, and we can turn around a little bit of the almost entirely sports karma. I feel like the negative we put into the universe far outweighs the positive, so maybe we can tilt those scales a little bit.
Want more Almost Entirely Sports? Watch the show live on the Sports Radio. This is Almost Entirely Sports with Joshua Briscoe.
Maybe you're hearing these dulcet tones for the first time because your car radio was broken and it just got stuck.
On Sports Radio 810 WHB.
Here's a quick thing that I saw on Twitter a day or two ago. Seth brought it back up here. Someone tweeted out, hey, what's a reasonable home temperature in the winter? This person says that they say 80 to 82 degrees is perfect.
In the house?
In the house in the winter.
I love heat. That's too much.
Right now it is 65.8 degrees in the studio, according to the thingy over here. I'm fine with that. I typically will have the thermostat set at 65, but if it's cold in the house, I'll happily up it to maybe as high as 68. I might even touch 70 if it's real cold out, trying to get the heat moving or whatever. But I'm a 65 boy typically.
I'm probably about 67. I think that's our normal, kind of house, at least during the wintertime.
Seth's point is that it would cost $11 billion to keep their house at 80 degrees in Minnesota in the winter. This is just not reasonable. But no amount of money would get your home that warm in Minnesota in the winter because physics don't work that way. Just put on a sweater, kids. Oh, God, I'm a grumpy old dad. Oh, this is shocking. Oh, I got to lay down.
You're listening to Almost Entirely Sports with Joshua Briscoe on Sports Radio 810 WH. You're listening to Almost Entirely Sports.
He had 2 homers, and they were both to Vogelbach of the Mariners, who is a large adult son, and he, he's so much fun to watch. Not because he's good, but he's just a big boy, and I like watching big boys.
With Joshua Briscoe.
Fun. I like watching big boys hit.
On Sports Radio 810 WHB.
Let's talk about some big boys hitting! Hold on. No, they're not allowed to hit yet. They're not allowed to play. Pitchers and catchers didn't report. Shoot.
Did the big boys report, though?
Hold on. Okay, did the big boys report yet? Let me Google that. Took me to a Union site, Union Pacific. Huge big boy steam engine returning to Wyoming after tour. That's on usnews.com. So I guess in some ways, some big boys have returned to action, but these appear to be trains and not baseball players. I don't know what David Lesky knows about trains, but you can follow him on Twitter at DBLesky. You can read his work on Inside the Crown on Substack, insidethecrown.substack.com. Lesky, what do you know about trains?
I know that I convinced a worker that I was a big train collector once to see if he would start talking trains with me, and he did. And at that point, I had no response because I don't know anything about trains. I know that they go choo-choo.
I can't believe you had an answer to that. I can't, Rudy is cackling through the glass. I can hear him from over here. I'm guessing it's not coming through my microphone. But you had an answer for that. That wasn't planned.
Look, if there, well, it's true. But if there's a weird question, I've probably tried to convince a coworker that I've been into whatever you're asking me about at some point in my life.
Wow, that's incredible. Around here, I just try to.
I love it.
I spend most of my days trying to convince people. I mean, we the Mike Sweeney story. It's just it's what I do. All right.
I just try to convince my coworkers that I care about baseball.
I don't think you're doing very well.
Yeah. So here's the thing.
Here's the problem. I don't think Rob Manfred's doing very well.
Right. Yes. We both said, here's the thing, in perfect synchronicity to the point that I thought it was an echo, actually. I thought I was getting feedback through your phone because we both said, here's the thing. Baseball was my first love. It really was. To this day, I enjoy baseball. Part of it, here was going to get that quick Inside the Crown Substack promo in there. Go to insidethecrown.substack.com so you can sign up and get all this stuff sent directly to your inbox, and you can see it when every time that Lesky puts out a story, it'll boom, be right there. You're familiar with Substack. You've been there. But I loved baseball. I have found myself loving some of the stuff that you have written about, especially in season, and some of the things that help me learn more about baseball in a different way. I love good storytelling that comes through baseball so often. And I'm not allowed to watch baseball or to talk about baseball really right now. Not that pitchers and catchers being out on the field would have changed my outlook of life this week, but it feels like baseball doesn't care about baseball.
Well, okay, let me back you up a little bit to give you something to smile about.
Okay.
All of 2021, all you wanted was Bobby Witt Jr.
Yeah.
That's all you wanted.
Yeah.
But you know what? Because they didn't do it, because he was never called up, never put on the 40-man, he's in surprise. He's playing baseball. He's hitting. So who's stupid now? That's all I have to say.
Me. The answer is always me. I don't know. I mean, I literally wrote down on my little legal pad here. I'm getting back into jotting down notes because my memory is not very good, and if I can write things down, I can circle back to them. But I wrote down 2 things at the top of the Lesky section on my legal pad. One was happy 1-year anniversary of the Inside the Crown newsletter on Substack.
Heck yeah.
That's fantastic. Jess on the other side. Let's go ahead.
Clap it up.
Thank you. I couldn't have done it without you. I mean, I could have, but I should say that because I'm on your show.
Yeah, no, I mean, you definitely, in a lot of ways, you did do it without me. And for at least the last 6 months, you've done it without even my acknowledgement, I think.
Josh did come up with the Bitly.
Oh,
That's true.
bit.ly/Lesky hates Bobby Witt.
I think so.
I think it'll get you there. Oh, man, I'm out of practice.
I don't know if you had
bit.ly/
Junior or not.
Bobby Witt. Yeah, good question. Nope, Bobby Witt just will take you there.
So Bobby Witt.
You go to bit.ly. Yeah, this is actually about his father. bit.ly/Lesky hates Bobby Witt. And that'll take you straight to insidethecrown.substack.com. fantastic. I forgot we did that. Thank you, Rudy, for reminding me of that.
You're welcome.
The fact that I did something funny like a year ago.
I just assume you've created anything. If there's a Substack, you've made a Bitly for it.
That's
I feel like there are others that you've made too, but
yeah. I'll dig into the
Lesky
source
Hates
code.
Money? Is there a Lesky Hates Money one?
I think there might be. Let's see. Okay, bit.ly/Lesky hates money. We'll also take you there. It'll get you there.
Perfect.
Yes. Because he's not gonna take your money. He's gonna write this content and just like basically print it off and walk it over and drop it through your mail slot in your door.
the interesting thing about that was I'm going down. I'll be in Arizona 12 days from today. I'm not counting or anything as I look out my window and see a foot of snow. My plan was I was planning on getting out there, talking to players, starting to charge.
Mm-hmm.
I can't justify charging people to read about this stuff when they won't even get on the field. So this is it's gotten to a point that this is baseball's fault, not mine.
Well, so that the first thing I had written down was 1 year of Inside the Crown. The second thing was literally just baseball ?
Yeah.
What like?
I before we get to that,
Sure.
I want to suggest a new Bitly.
New Bitly? Oh man. I don't know how to do
Bit.ly.
this.
Baseball hates Lesky.
Okay.
Yeah, that's perfect.
I'll work on that. I will. Maybe also go bit.ly/visit this link if you don't think Rob Manfred has done an excellent job as the commissioner of Major League Baseball. It's a little wordy. But I think we can get there. But so, I mean, I really am at this point, Lesky, where you say you can't charge people for this content because baseball's not letting baseball happen. And I really do kind of just feel an ambivalence about this. This keeps happening. It feels like every offseason now there is some sort of labor dispute. And obviously COVID was a curveball, but like it felt like they blundered that whole thing as well. I make it make sense. Not justify what's happening, but like explain to me what maybe some of us are missing in this current lockout.
Well, first of all, the good news is once this is taken care of, and whether that's next week or 3 weeks or 2 months, whatever it is, it's not going to happen again until 2026. So at least I guess I shouldn't predict against another pandemic. But
right, right.
Assuming that we can, live life healthily for a few years, this is going to go through the 2026 season. So that's at least somewhat comforting. But yeah, I mean, what's going on right now is, to sum it up, basically, the players want their fair share. The owners want to keep getting their sweetheart deal. And neither side seems willing to budge very much. And the problem that we run into is the last 2, maybe 3 CBAs, the players have pretty clearly lost. If a neutral third party looks at these CBAs, the owners got what they wanted a lot more than the players over the last 2 or 3. And it's so obvious that people. I mean, I'm not a labor expert. I've worked at a law firm for like 9 months doing like billing stuff. So I don't. That's the closest I can get to being an expert there.
Sure.
And I see it. I mean, if you look at the deals, it takes about 10 minutes to realize, oh, the players got mugged on that pretty much. And so the problem is the players aren't necessarily willing to give much because they think they've given too much. And it's not that they're wrong. And I think that this is where the nuance comes in. You can't. Nuance is hard on especially on Twitter.
Yeah.
The players are not doing everything they can, I don't believe, to get baseball back on the field. But I also don't blame them because of what's happened in the past, really since '94, since the 94-95 strike. I mean, they've kind of had their what handed to them in negotiations. And I think that they're trying to get a lot back in this one. And what's interesting is you read people like Joe Sheehan, who is much smarter about this stuff than I am. And he looks at that and he goes, well, the players are offering really isn't a bad deal for the owners. It's just a bad deal compared to what they've had for, I don't know, 15, 20 years.
Yeah.
And so that's where they are right now. And the problem that we have is the owners got the players, which they didn't have to do. That was not a requirement. They could have continued to negotiate and kept baseball open and running and all that, and they would be working under the previous CBA, which has happened before. Anyway, they chose to lock the players out, whatever. They said, hey, this is going to expedite the bargaining process. And then they proceeded not to say a word for 43 days. I mean, take a step forward. Respond to the players' most recent proposal. And then they do respond. And then this is where the players, I think, are, I don't want to say at fault, but where they have some culpability is they take a week. And then it's a week. And then it's a week. And then it just... The response time to me is just far too slow on both sides. And that's as far as I will go from blaming, quote, both sides.
Yeah.
The reality is this is on the owners. I mean, they are refusing to negotiate on topics. And the players, I mean, you see guys like Jim Bowden, as he's tweeted out, the players haven't done anything. Well, that's not true in any way, shape, or form. The players have completely dropped the service time proposal. They wanted to lower service time and then get people to frequency faster, all that. And they said, you know what? That's off the table. That's a pretty big concession. Yeah. I'm not surprised that they did it because I thought they would. I'm surprised they did it as fast as they did. But they've done it. The owners wanted a 14-team postseason. The players said, hey, we'll do 12. Well, it's up from 10. So, I don't know, the middle point between 10 and 14, what is that, 12? Yeah, okay.
I'm not
so
great at math, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, even not great at math, you got that one, right?
Mm-hmm. I did.
The players have moved a lot. And then today, they made a proposal that what's interesting, and I'm not 100% sure on this because I've seen it in a couple ways, and so I want to be a little careful here. But the plan that both sides agreed on paying the top 30 pre-ARB players, so the guys who are in their 0 to 3 years, a bonus pool for awards and top players based on wins above replacement and all that stuff. And I'm sure there are very fine details that we will never see unless we comb to the CBA once it's agreed to. Well, the problem is the owners wanted to pay originally $10 million, then they upped to $15 million. The players originally asked for $105 million. They dropped to $100 million. Today they upped their ask to $115 million. But it's because they're now asking for 150 players to be paid because they came down in how many players reach arbitration after their second season.
Yeah.
So, and I know it gets a little wonky here and complicated just in chatting instead of reading the words, but that to me seems like a pretty big compromise as well. So, I mean, what we're coming down to, in my opinion, obviously not having been in the negotiations, what I think we're coming down to is the players want to hire a luxury tax, and rightfully so, and the players want a higher minimum salary than they currently have. And they're a lot closer on minimum salary, it seems like, than the luxury tax, but those are two big issues. The owners look at the luxury tax as a non-starter. They claim they've budged by adding like $1.78 to it.
Right.
The players have asked for a lot more. Right now, the end of the 2021 season, it was $210 million. The players want to start it, I believe, at $240 for the 2022 season, and that escalates every year, rightfully so. That makes sense. I think they want to get it to like $273 by the fifth year of this CBA, and the owners have countered with, we'll start it at $214 and end it at $222.
Yeah,
well, that's
a lot of money missing there. Yeah,
yeah, and that's a big chunk. I think ultimately, my guess is those extra two playoff teams, that's what the players are going to give in on to get what they want money-wise.
And that I think would make sense. Fine. Like, yeah, just that you have more teams in the playoffs. You know, you can take what the NFL has done and say it's gotten watered down a little bit. We watched, and then it's easier for a couple more teams and then a couple more rosters of players to have playoff experience and playoff baseball. And there's more money in that pie for everybody. So that makes sense.
Well, part of the issue, real quick, is that the players want to value winning more. And right now, and this is not inaccurate. Right now, winning 80 games is no man's land.
Yeah.
You can say the altruistic look is, hey, we're cool with winning 80 games because it's better than 73, whatever. But the reality is, you can spend less money, get a higher draft pick. Oh, and by the way, they've also agreed on a draft lottery. I don't know what the parameters are yet, but but you can spend less money, get a higher draft pick, and not worry about it. But if you have 7 playoff teams in this league, I ran the numbers. I mean, you can get in at 80, 81 wins, not every year, but occasionally, and so then it becomes more possible to win, so maybe more teams will spend money to get to 83 wins or whatever it is. So I can see the players seeing 14 playoff teams as at least some positive. So I'm guessing that's where it ends up, honestly. And like they're going to start meeting apparently daily on Monday, which I don't understand why not tomorrow, but whatever. That's another question. The deadline's the 28th, basically, is what it comes down to start to play baseball on March 31st. At this point, I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of people would be surprised if there's opening day on March 31st. I wouldn't be surprised. At some point, they're going to hit a deadline and somebody's going to cave. And I don't know if that deadline is to get to March 31st and play on April 15th, but at some deadline, one of the sides is going to say, "Okay, Uncle." So we'll see. We'll see what it is.
Right there at the end, you tiptoed right up to what I was going to ask you before we actually talked about, the Kansas City Royals. So I'm wondering if I know your answer now, but I mean, how many, if you had to bet, just knowing what you know, obviously it's kind of an impossible question, but how many regular season games are going to get played this year if you had to put your money down right now?
I would say at least 154. I just can't imagine, and maybe I'm being naive and stupid here, but I cannot imagine that when push comes to shove, both sides look at what happened in 2020, which is partially owners' fault, partially, they could have played more games, but also they were never going to play 162. I can't imagine they look at that and then get to a point this year where they say, yeah, we're cool with playing 100. I just don't see it. I don't see it happening.
What if I put the over-under at 161.5?
I would probably take the under, just because, what is today, the 17th? They're going to talk on the 21st. They've got 1 week to come to a deal. It could happen. Well, and the other thing, too, if they don't start on March 31st, they could still play 162 games.
Right.
It's not like, we're starting to play on April 2nd. We're going to lop off 2 games. No, not necessarily. It could very well be that they had some extra off days in the last CBA that both sides could agree, hey, we're gonna cut off those, I think, 5 extra off days this year. You're not going to get them anymore. It's just for 1 year. It's just we can play 162. I could see that happening. So then you get an extra week to get to 162. But I would probably take the under, but it's real close.
Let's talk about the actual Royals, or actual baseball players, if that's okay with you. Because now we're in this very strange spot.
Can we say their names? Are we allowed to say that? Or no?
No, you can say their positions, and then they play for the Kansas City baseball team.
Or
so Royals names. Short bobblehead night.
Yeah. No, I like Rudy's idea too. Yeah, if you wanted to talk about the young up and comer Bobble Whiff, which is a horrible name for a baseball player. Holy smokes.
We can talk about him. He's not on the 40-man.
That's fair, but I like the idea of talking about Bobble Whiff Jr. because that literally is the worst name. That is an error and a strikeout in a name.
We're basically creating our own, just Reggie Stalker, but for every Royals.
That's like an extra innings baseball name from old Nintendo game.
Yes, 100%. Was that what Barry Bonds was there?
Yeah, so Reggie Stalker was Barry Bonds, and the show for
Reggie Stalker was Reggie Stalker.
Yeah, he was the filler for a left-handed batter.
Wasn't it John Dow MVP? Wasn't that Barry Bonds?
I don't know, but I don't. Rudy is. I'm looking at you as the expert here. I don't remember this.
I just know Reggie Stalker was MLB The Show.
Rudy's
I think it was John Dowd. If you get a chance to look it up, let me know when I'm right.
You're right.
Yes.
So what was this for?
I don't know, man. I can't believe you asked me for more details, man. What was that, Lesky?
It was MVP baseball, the old EA.
05.
Gotcha.
MVP baseball 05.
MVP baseball version. Gotcha.
I can't believe I Googled that in 3 seconds. And I was like, can I get more information on that, please, before I completely agree with you?
Sorry. I misheard Lesky where I thought he was talking about the show. And I'm like, well, I've definitely got it here, and I definitely played with Reggie Stalker.
No, it's also
I understand. Yeah. That makes sense. I honestly never thought that another baseball game would also have to do that.
So, Lesky, and again, if you want to read along with the newsletter, you can go to bit.ly/LeskyLovesBrady. A currently active Bitly that we made at some point last year. If you'd like to go read the Inside the Crown newsletter,
Brady House.
That's Brady Singer, baby.
Oh, was it Brady Singer? Okay,
Brady Singer,
Not Tom Brady. I'd like to point that out.
Not Tom. Yeah.
No, it's just about how much. It's about how much Lesky loves Brady Singer, which you can read all about on Inside the Crown.
bit.ly/Singer learn to change up.
Yeah, we'll get there. We'll get there if we get there.
That just goes to a crashed website.
Yeah, that just takes you to my Twitter. It's all a prank. So it's kind of funny because we are in this space where we're talking about baseball as a whole some, and I'm thinking about the Royals as like a roster a little bit going in the next season, but they're still we've just sort of missed hot stove. Like we're in this space where you wrote about some like, hey, what are some free agency moves they could make? You wrote about some trade candidates that the Royals could potentially move. But it just sort of feels weird to be talking about this while we're also talking about a deadline for spring training. I don't know. I don't know what part of that to you think is the place to start, but we shouldn't be treating this roster as if it is fully formed right now.
No, there's, 600 free agents out there?
Crazy.
And I mean, the vast majority are going to sign, if they sign, minor league deals.
Right.
So, and we will never hear their name until, we'll hear them next offseason when they sign another minor league deal somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
But, I mean, there's like 140 major league free agents still out there. And, I mean, there's so many deals left to be done. Look, the A's, who are going to have this great sell-off, haven't traded a player yet.
Mm.
I mean, you could look at the A's 40-man roster right now, and I think you could easily say they're going to trade 5 or 6 of those guys that would currently be on their depth chart as starters. So, I mean, you look at the Royals roster right now, Carlos Santana's at first base.
Yeah.
If he's on another team in whatever day the lockout ends, if he's on another team a day later, it wouldn't surprise me.
Can I say that he clearly should be? Is that too strong? Nothing but love for him. I just what's the bleeping point?
Well, I mean, the only reason he wouldn't be is if he wants him. I should say he's probably a guy who would take a little bit longer because you got to shake out where Matt Olson goes, where Freddie Freeman signed, Anthony Rizzo. But I will say the DH in both leagues helps. Not that Santana is necessarily a DH candidate, but you could look. I mean, go to Philadelphia. He played a year there. Rhys Hoskins is not a good defensive first baseman. If you want to stick him at DH and keep him healthier, get a guy who's competent. He's a decent first baseman. He's not great. He's not what Nick Pratto will be. Mm-hmm. But you can put him at first base and feel pretty good. I mean, that makes some sense. So that opens up the market quite a bit because now you can get National League teams that have iron gloves at first base. But he's like was at the deadline. He's the sixth option. That's whatever it is. So the other guys have to get done first. But I mean, there's no reason for him to be on this roster. I wouldn't say opening day just because they're not going to dump him.
Right.
But there's no reason for him to be on the roster by July 31st.
Yeah.
So, honestly, June 1st. Probably. But, I mean, there are so many moves they can still make. They're talking about they still want a bullpen arm. I would go, not anymore because I don't know what's available that's worth it. But I would still go get a starter if they can find somebody on the trade market. I mean, there's some improvements they can make, and I think the Royals could actually benefit from this because if teams are frantic and they're kind of left in the dust, hey, you want a second baseman? Here's a Whit Merrifield. Not that I think he's going to get moved, but I feel like there's an awful lot of possibility that with things moving so fast, the dust could settle and the Royals could say, hey, we're still here. You want something? Or we want, whatever it might be. And so the roster today, 5 days after the lockout, the roster today can be very different than that roster.
You have a real knack of answering a question and then leading right up to me thinking, "Ooh, I'll ask him about this," and then you answer that question yourself, like to the point that I literally might not need to be here oftentimes for our conversations, which is great.
So I never stop talking.
No,
You
because
just gotta ask the first question to get the ball rolling, and then Lesky just knows.
And then I can
what
eat
the
my
next
Ritz crackers.
10 questions are.
Yeah, because it's not that you're rambling aimlessly. It is I'm not kidding. It is. I'm gonna ask what's a place where the Royals should still add? And I really think they could still add in these two places. Well, damn it, Lesky, what am I even here for? What's my job even supposed to be? You've already answered it.
The Billies.
Turn around, I'm right behind you.
And then then I have to. That would be jarring because it would have been on Twitch the whole time, and I would have just you would have just been back there. I would have just been
He's just been hiding behind the Kelsey and Mahomes cutouts that are just off the screen.
that would be perfect. Well, so let me go more macro then, because you've already answered a bunch of the sort of micro questions. But I think the answer to a lot of the questions about moves the Royals could or should make right now, I think to answer those questions, you have to answer the question of what are the Royals right now in your eyes, and then what do you think they are to themselves in terms of their timeline for contention, how close they are to actually contending, what that might look like. Because if you're 7 pieces away and you make a big splash move to get 3 pieces, thanks for nothing. But if they think they're 2 pieces away, I think they can go grab a couple. Now we're cooking with gas. So where are they actually, and where do they think they are by your best estimation?
Well, I mean, a lot of this is hard to answer because we don't know how many playoff teams there will be.
Yeah, fair enough.
I don't think that they are one of the 7 best teams in the league, and I don't think that they are 2 players away from being one of the 7 best teams in the league. But they won 74 games last year. Outside of Salvador Perez and Nicky Lopez, I'm not sure what went exceptionally well that maybe they weren't expecting to go well. And so I think you can make a pretty good argument that right now with the roster they have, assuming a couple guys come up, assuming Lynch gets better, Bubic or Singer, whoever it is, doesn't matter who it is, which of the young starters has some consistency and gives them 170 innings, whoever that might be, I think you can make a pretty strong argument that they're a 77, 78 win team right now. And that can, Bobby Witt Jr. starts on the roster and hits the way that the projections think he will. Maybe that adds a win or 2. If MJ Melendez what he did in the minors, that adds a win or 2. If Prado comes up and he does what he did in the minors, that adds a win or 2. And then you're at 83, 84 wins. And now, all of a sudden, you actually are kind of in that conversation for the 7th best team. Last year, the 7th best team, I think, won 90 games. So, but 6 wins, I mean, really, I always look at a team and you say, okay, if they're an 80-win team, I could see them winning 70 or 90. I feel like there's a 10-win swing because it's a long season. Yeah. And so you get to 84, and I don't know, you're just a couple good breaks away, a couple bad breaks away from being 20 games under, too. But,
right.
It's okay. And so I think that the Royals probably see themselves privately about the same. Publicly, I think that they want to portray that they're maybe a step ahead of that. So whereas I see them at 77, 78 right now, publicly they'd probably say 81, 82. And then you start to think about these things that could go right, and you go, well, if this goes right, that's 88 wins, and then you're right there. So, I mean, this is a broken record every single year over the last couple of years, but it kind of depends on the young guys. Because if Witt, Prado, and Melendez hit, the offense goes from a question mark to a positive. If Lynch, again, it doesn't really matter which 3 or 4 guys step up because there's so many of them, but if it's Lynch, Singer, and Bubic become 2, 3, 4 starters, that changes the equation quite a bit, because then you've got Mike Minor, Brad Keller hanging around, and that's a pretty solid rotation if those 3 guys or any 3 guys become 2, 3, 4 stars. Carlos Hernandez, Jackson, whoever, it doesn't matter. So ultimately, their ceiling doesn't matter who they bring in. It's what happens with the internal guys, and that's a big question mark, because especially with the hitters, we know that their change in offensive development has worked in the minors. Mm-hmm. We haven't seen it in the majors yet. The only guy who's come up, Kyle Isbell is the guy. He struggled to start. I thought he looked really good in September. it was 40-something plate appearances. So, that's it's hard to say, okay, I believe in this completely, but also it's what we have to go on. So it worked. But, I mean, if these guys come up and hit, and then you've got Nick Lofton and Michael Massey, and look down even farther, John Rave is a center fielder who he started to get into his power a little bit. If he can take that next step, all of a sudden they have a center field prospect, which they haven't had before. And so there's a lot of possibilities once these other guys come up to see if what they've done in the minors translates to the majors. There's no reason why it shouldn't. Ultimately, it's still baseball, but we don't know that yet. And so that's the question with this team. It's the same question we had before last season. Last season it was they'll go as far as the young pitching can take them. Pitching struggled, and they didn't go far. But young pitching gets better sometimes. I mean, it doesn't always. It's not a guarantee that they're going to improve. But, I mean, young pitch, it's tough. I mean, I think it was Jim Memolo on MLB Network was talking about looking at this Royals roster and thinking about the 1990 Braves. And, I mean, you had Tom Glavine up a 5.5 ERA. I mean, that was not a good pitching staff. And then in 91, they were in the World Series. And I'm not saying the Royals can do that. Young pitchers make jumps sometimes. Yeah. And I don't this could go down a rabbit hole, and I know that we're probably about done here. But the good thing from the lockout could very well be that these young pitchers had instruction from outside the organization all winter because they couldn't work with the Royals staff. And so it's a really interesting story. It's a really interesting story to see what happens because think about, I mean, just I'm going to paint you a picture here. Daniel Lynch, I'm going to use him. He looked really good in mostly August. That he had a good July start too. If he comes out and looks like that guy for a full season, the question of who gets the credit is going to be so fascinating to me because he didn't work with the Royals all year. I mean, from December 2nd until whenever this lockout ends, whatever he's been doing has been on his own with his own people. So does that save a job? I don't know. I don't know the answer, but it's interesting, and I'm really looking forward to finding that out.
I love this setting up for a theory that may or may not become relevant.
The Royals win the division backed off of like 20 different people developing the Royals pitchers, but not the Royals.
Cal Eldred gets a contract extension.
Of course. You got to get Cal extension. Maybe manager in waiting title.
I love that. Wow. Let's put a pin in that. Don't let me forget about that if they come out throwing flames out of the gate.
Also, if they are bad, I'm just going to assume that Cal's been undercover working with them the whole time. I'm just going to throw him under the bus and just be like,
he borrowed
it's clearly his fault.
Fake mustache.
Yes. Yes, that's so good. Here could be our last question. You can talk about it for 8 or 9 minutes, and then we'll get out of here. I love your answers to questions. I make fun of the ones I love. Sorry, Lesky.
It's how we show love here.
It really is, because God knows we can't just do it through honest, emotional self-reflection.
Of course not. We're broken.
Yeah, that's not how. I thought you were going to say we're bros. I was going to be like, yeah, also that. A lot of issues that are really coming to light tonight. Of those young guys right now, if I said I want you to buy and sell stock in one of each of those, one of those young pitchers, you can make that class as big or as narrow as you'd like for it to. But one guy that you're saying, you know what, I'm bullish on, and then one guy that you think is maybe being a little bit overpriced right now. Not just who you think is going to be best and who you think is going to be worst out of that group, but particularly how they're being discussed right now, where you could find yourself a little market value.
It's interesting to me. I feel like, and even me in this conversation, Carlos Hernandez is like kind of forgotten.
Yeah.
But he was the best of all the young pitchers this past season. And I don't know if you read Alex's piece this morning with the questions from Keith Law. I don't know if you've gotten to that or not. But Keith Law didn't mention Carlos Hernandez's changeup at all and thought he would be a better two-pitch reliever. Hernandez, that changeup is good, I think. I'm not an expert here, I guess. But I think his changeup is good. And I feel like if you're going to look at one of these guys who will be a game one type starter, don't you go with the guy with the nasty better 98 and a changeup.
Real
The
quick,
guy
like,
who has more than 2 pitches.
yeah, I was gonna say. So I literally was just looking around, like I had dropped acid by accident. But isn't the whole thing on Carlos Hernandez that he does have like a legit array of pitches?
Yeah, and I mean,
They're not all perfect. They're not all ready to go. But
he mentioned maybe dumping the curve, and that I could see that. I could buy that because it's a pretty inconsistent pitch. Doesn't mean. I mean, I don't know that I would dump it necessarily, but I could see why. But, I mean, this is a guy, he throws 2 fastballs, a changeup, and a slider, and they're all really good, I think.
Yeah.
I think that there's a lot of stock taken off of him from his September when, I wrote, the first time he looked bad, you could just, and I wrote this, you could see he looked tired. He was just worn down. And I don't remember what the innings numbers were, but I looked him up. He was like 80 innings over his previous high, which was like 3 years ago. So it's not a surprise that he wore down. So he would be the guy that I would buy.
Yeah.
The guy that I think I would sell, and it's hard because we don't really know what they've been up to over the last 3 months or whatever it is. But, and sorry to pile on Jackson, but it's Jackson Kowar. I want to believe, but the fastball is just so straight. And I don't know if his changeup is it's fantastic. I mean, it's a legitimately probably one of the 3 or 4 best changeups in the organization. And so if he can find a wrinkle to his fastball, the answer changes completely. But I didn't see anything. I don't think he's a 9 ERA guy or whatever it was in 2021. But I didn't see anything that says he can start a game 2. or whatever it might be, and I don't know. I mentioned this throughout the year. I thought he might be the guy that they would move and not call up because they didn't want to take the shine off him, and the shine's off of him.
yeah.
And so, I don't know if they can still move him or not. But if a team says we want upside, if the A's come calling and say, hey, we'll give you Frankie Montas, but we got to have one of your young pitchers, I would love to see Jackson Kowar be that pitcher.
If that call was to you, you have to keep yourself from going Jackson Kowar. I mean, we could.
Right. If that call was to me, it'd be boy. Let me see. We've got there's Hernandez and Boo, but you know what? I feel like Jackson Kowar might do well with you guys.
You would have to start with
real cool.
You have to start with it can't be Kowar. Hernandez, Lynch, Singh. Yeah, it's just Kowar.
Maybe Kowar.
I don't know. You guys love Kowar, right? We love Kowar. I don't know. It's just.
You guys
would be
obviously
sweating.
love
You would
Kowar.
hear the sweat through the phone.
It's going.
Yeah.
Jackson Kowar for who? Oh God! Could you sweeten the pot at all? No. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Well, no.
right.
I think Ben would say, "I'm going to call you back."
Yeah.
I gotta think about this. Give me 10 minutes. I need to noodle on it. You say the word noodle, and people think, "Oh, he's really thinking."
I got a noodle on it. I gotta see what our VP of Communications thinks. He's a real bleep hole about this stuff, and
Well, don't get me started on him.
let's see if we can't get you some access this year, Lesky. Let's see if we can't get you a better seat to trade away Jackson Kowar from.
I think if we can insult Sam every time I'm on, that should really help.
Yeah, it didn't strike me just now that maybe people don't know who we're talking about or why we just hit the VP of Royals Communications with such a straight. Like, well, I really like Swanee. I don't understand. No, it's not him anymore. It's not him anymore.
Swanee gone.
Swanee is golfing in Hawaii somewhere, probably.
Yes.
Real quick because
Okay, don't tell me we have to break. This can be the last thing because I know we're late. We're late.
Carlos Hernandez threw 124 and a third innings in 2019. Since then, he has thrown 100 and a third.
Yeah,
Last 2 seasons, he's just thrown, essentially, 100 innings.
Yeah.
Well, and in his minor league numbers to last year, and it ended up being like 150 or 147.
Yeah, that's fair. I was just looking at major leagues, yes.
Yeah, so it's, he went down. It's obvious. I think all of them wore down. You look, they didn't pitch in 2020. They didn't pitch a competitive inning in 2020. And then you expect them to go out and throw 120 innings in 2021. Well, no, it doesn't work that way. Your arm just doesn't. They were bound to wear down. I think a lot of them did, and that's what we saw in September. And that's why you have to take that with a bit of a grain of salt. And on both sides too. Kyle Isbell's numbers he was facing guys who wore down in September. So you got to look at it both ways.
Well, Lesky, we can look at it any number of ways. If we go to insidethecrown.substack.com, we can check out the Inside the Crown newsletter. You can also get there any number of other ways. bit.ly/Lesky loves Brady, bit.ly/Lesky hates money, bit.ly/
Baseball hates Lesky.
Baseball hates Lesky is going to be the new one. I'll get that there
Maybe
during
just
the break.
Manfred hates Lesky. Maybe just really.
Rob hates
Rob
Lesky. We can really
hates
shorten
Lesky.
it down.
Mutual, Rob.
Who? Lesky hates Rob. Rob hates. No, I'll get you there. I'll make a bunch of Bitleys during the break. We'll see how many I actually get to. Plus, you can follow him on Twitter at DBLesky. Lesky, it won't be another 6 months before we have you on. We will actually talk about the sport with the small round ball on a pretty regular basis from this point forward. If you'll have us,
I would love that. I would love nothing more.
Ready for golf.
Thank you, Lesky. It
Thanks,
just
guys.
took the wind out of my sails. I was gonna do a whole thing, and really just pop the balloon. And he's right. All we have to do is pop the balloon, and you just popped it before I could. So it's like somebody else blowing out the candles on the cake, like "Happy birthday to you," and you go, and then your brother goes.
That's what my nephew does. Any birthday cake he's around, he's got to be the one to blow him out.
Uncle Woody, I won it from you. Go read Lesky's newsletter and don't let anybody else blow out your candles.
Did you know you can listen to Almost Entirely Sports anywhere, anytime? Well, you can. Just search for Almost Entirely Sports wherever you get your podcasts.
Hey, Kansas City, it's Jeff Briggs with Victory Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram, home of the Victory Effect. Our pledge to drive down vehicle pricing for the city we love. The Start Something New sales event kicks off 2022, and interest rates remain close to all-time lows, plus trade values are bringing more than ever. It's a great time to buy. We know it's hard to find a replacement, but did you know if you custom order a new vehicle at Victory, you get to play best ball with the factory incentives? That's right. Get an accurate upfront price quote when you order today, and if the rebates are better when the vehicle arrives, the extra savings goes right in your pocket. It's a simple process, and we can show you how easy it is to customize a new vehicle and have it shipped directly to you, complete with your name personalized on the window sticker. And don't forget, if you have a trade, we buy your car at top dollar regardless of if you purchase a new vehicle from us or not. Visit us at Kansas City's only automotive outlet mall, the Legends Auto Plaza, on the southeast corner of 435 and Parallel, just east of Nebraska Furniture Mart, or online at victorymotorskc.com, where our first price is better than their last.
Matt Coker here from West Coast Men's Health. Guys, Viagra is not the answer for your problem. I know you think it is, but Viagra has horrible side effects, and for most men, the longer you're on it, the less it works. Viagra is not a curative medication. It's not fixing your problem. It's a Band-Aid for a shark bite. Acoustic wave therapy is the newest technology that can correct your problem, not just treat it. We can do something that no pill can do. We can restore your blood flow naturally. Get off Viagra today. Change your life like the thousands of men who already have, regardless of your age or your medical history. If you're tired of dealing with Peyronie's disease or erectile dysfunction, then call West Coast Men's Health today.
Call 913-243-3200. That's 913-243-3200. 913-243-3200. Online at westcoastmenshealth.com. HSA cards welcome and financing available.
The first place Kansas City Comets are back in action this Sunday afternoon at Cable Dahmer Arena at 4 p.m. against their longtime rivals, the Milwaukee Wave. The Comets are off to one of the best starts in team history and currently sit comfortably atop the MASL Central Division. Kansas City Comets soccer is fast, furious, high-scoring action for the entire family. Get your tickets today by calling 888-9-COMETS or by visiting Ticketmaster.com. The Comets and Hot Winter Nights return this Sunday afternoon at 4 p.m. against the Milwaukee Wave.
Joe's Kansas City Barbecue has made their New Year resolution, and it's to serve more barbecue. That means more competition meats by the pound during playoff football and basketball watch parties. That means more curbside pickups when you order on the Joe's Kansas City app. That means shipping more Joe's Kansas City Barbecue anywhere in the nation to your friends and family. And that means more catering meetings and events at the Joe's 180 room in Olathe. Check out all Joe's can do for you in 2022 at www.joeskc.com.
Hi, Tyler Reed. Reed Buick GMC had a record December, and you know what that means? We have fresh, clean, local trade-ins priced right and ready to sell. SUVs, trucks, minivans, domestics, and imports at market-based pricing you'll have to see to believe. Visit ReedBuickGMC.com today or call now 800-291-9406 to check our latest availability. There has never been a better time to buy a great used car, truck, or SUV. Reed Buick GMC is values driven.
The NASCAR Cup Series.
40 cars come down to the line. They call it the Great American Race.
Season gets underway in Daytona.
Keselowski's in line. Now he turns him. Both Team Penske cars crash. Keselowski is up in a ball of flame.
It's the Great American Race.
It will be a victory by mere inches. McDowell wins.
The Daytona 500.
Tune in for live coverage of the Daytona 500 Sunday on Sports Radio 810 WHB.
Winter is the time that I used to dread for my garage floor. Snow and ice mixed with salt dripping from my car onto that garage floor. It was a mess and hard to clean. With my new E-Tech floor, that's not a problem. It's easy to clean, the concrete is protected, it looks great all year round, and my floor has a 15-year warranty. Give E-Tech Custom Coatings a call today for a free estimate. That's ETEKCustomCoatings.com. Locally owned and operated.
This is Almost Entirely Sports with Joshua Briscoe.
The baseball's always trying to start with snow on the ground and ending with snow on the ground. Baseball, hey, baseball, are you sure?
On Sports Radio 810 WHB.
Thanks again to David Lesky for being as generous with his time as he is. Follow him on Twitter at DBLesky. Check out Inside the Crown. I got a year of the newsletter, and he's just...
missed his voice.
I did too, man. And I just...
Now, like, when I read his, like, newsletter, which is, every time it comes out, I read it. I genuinely enjoy his newsletter a lot, but every time I do read it, like, I hear his voice. Like, I feel like I'm reading it in his voice.
I haven't read his newsletter since October, of course, but I assume that he's still been doing it.
Yeah.
That's not true.
They come out, about, but sometimes there's multiple weeks. He's been picking them up again, the last 2 or 3 weeks, but generally he always had, had some good stuff. Like recently I enjoyed reading just a show that I do.
Yeah, it's gotta flex that you read it.
I enjoyed reading about Brad Keller's fastball, right? And the reasons why we saw Brad Keller struggle was the fastball and how it's not necessarily even so much just the velocity, but some of the movement. And it's not that it's not moving, just moving in different ways. And
the Brad Keller and the terrible, horrible, no good, very bad fastball.
Yeah.
You proved that you read the story. I proved that I got the email.
Which, I mean, that's worth 90% of it, right?
I was going to say that I would legit put Lesky up there with anybody. I mean, Lesky mentioned Alec Lewis of The Athletic. Well, I'm sure we'll have him on the show very soon. But, I was thinking, does it sound, this just might be a meta closeout to the show here tonight. I imagine that it could sound disingenuous on some level whenever I tell you, we come back from a break and I say, hey, seriously, please go follow Dan Lust and David Lesky on Twitter because I think they're just about the best at their thing. I would understand if it sounded disingenuous because it's almost impossible for that to be true. But I tell you, man, I mean, that's just the people that we have on this show are people that I genuinely think do an incredible job. We don't have people on the show out of obligation because if we don't really want to talk to one of these people, we'll just do another hour of show. You know what I mean? I really mean all that.
Yeah, and I think especially with the people who are consistently on the show,
yeah.
I think what makes them so good, they're obviously very smart, but it's also the fact that I don't think really any of them take themselves or even necessarily the industry too seriously, right?
Yeah.
Like sports is fun.
Yep.
There is that sense of humor in what they write. I mean, Lesky makes jokes in his newsletter at times, right? Like
yep.
there's a sense that, hey, this is important. You care about it. I'm going to give you the best information possible, but also we're going to have fun with it because otherwise, what are we doing, right? Like that's why we watch sports, right? That's why we read about sports. That's why we're so invested in this. Is because it's fun.
Yeah, and I mean this is going to turn into impossible for this not to just be a patting ourselves in the back thing. But I was thinking about Radio Row again a little bit this week, and Cooper Rush was not he wasn't out there selling anything, and he was pretty quiet, like a guy who's a backup quarterback that's kind of trying to, very much so, even more so than Taylor Heineke, who's also not a soft-spoken guy. But you know what? By the end of those conversations, I like, again, this is now just a production meeting where I'm going to, I think, accidentally say that, like, we just do a great job. And that everyone can hear it because it's actually on the radio.
Yeah, it's our show. We're allowed to do that.
Fair enough. But, like, I think a lot of people appreciate the realization or the opportunity to not have to fire off their hottest take in 3 minutes and scald off your eyebrows. We talked to Johnny Avelli, he's the head of the DraftKings Sportsbook. I did not have a big series of questions planned for him. I did not have a long list of things I knew him from or whatever. But we got to a point where he could talk about his house casino stories. Everybody's got stories, and everybody has a personality. I think, and this is true for a lot of, I think, longer form audio mediums. So it's not just like, hey, here's how Almost Entirely Sports is better than everybody. But man, I just really think that there is something that people want to put out there that is their actual personality or what they think is fun or interesting. If it's about their story as a person or what they're interested in or whatever. And I just, again, even as a consumer, like, I'm not usually terribly interested in listening to conversations if both people are pigeonholed in. You know, if it's like the host is just asking about the nuts and bolts and the guest is just there to answer them with yeses and nos. It's one of the real challenges of television, obviously. You just have less space to work with. I just, maybe it's self-congratulatory, but I like the little space we got here, and I like the people that we have that buy into it.
Like, everybody's got a story to tell, whether it's about themselves, right? Like, people want to be seen, they want to be heard, right?
Yep.
And it's just like, but the reality is not everybody gives them that opportunity. They're not always given that opportunity to be themselves or to tell their story, like their real story.
Thanks, Rudy. That's about enough out of you.
That's good. Very good comedic timing.
Thanks. I could hear the clock tick, and I knew I had to take a jab at it.
It was very good.
I
also thank you, Andy Stash, for saying that's why we're not bad radio.
AES FTW, by the way. That's for the win. I would say WTF, AES, FTW, WFT, watch the football team forever. So also to that point, I really appreciate the people who listen to this show and understand those little ways that this show I think is fun and special. Tomorrow we'll talk to Sterling Holmes and Mick Schaefer, a couple people who get it. Talk to you tomorrow. Bye, Mom.
You are listening to Almost Entirely Sports with Joshua Briscoe on Sports Radio 810 WHB.
Here are KU coach Bill Self and Dan Chandler of the Salty Iguana Mexican Restaurant.
Coach, I know you love the family fun and great values at the Salty Iguana. What about the food?
Spank, you know